There are betrayals that silently creep into your own family, just waiting for the opportunity to destroy everything you have worked so hard to build. I believed that if I worked hard enough, if I sacrificed enough, eventually I would be recognized. I was wrong. And the price I paid for that naivety almost destroyed me. But from those ashes, I found a way to strike back in a way they never saw coming. If you think blood ties will never sell you out for power and money, then my story will make you think again. My name is Amelia Dawson. I was 25 years old when everything began. Freshly graduated with a master's degree in business administration from UCLA, with top honors. My father, Samuel Dawson, was a brilliant engineer but a terrible businessman. The company he founded, Dawson Dynamics, a small tech consulting firm in San Diego, was on its last legs. In just 3 months, if no miracle happened, the company would go bankrupt. Bank debts were piling up. Clients were canceling contracts one after another. Investors were turning their backs coldly. Worse, my father's health was deteriorating badly under the pressure. He became gaunt, his hair turning completely white in just a few months. And then there was Anthony, my brother. At 31 years old, Anthony was the golden child in my parents' eyes. Handsome, smooth-talking, spoiled from birth. But beneath that glamorous facade were endless parties, enormous credit card debts, and countless unstable relationships. While my father struggled to scrape together enough to pay employee wages, Anthony swiped the company card to jet off to Vegas for weekends, hosting lavish parties and flaunting them all over social media. Yet somehow, my father still blindly believed Anthony would mature at the right time. I could not stand by and watch. I still remember that stormy night, stepping into the office to find my father slumped over his desk, clutching blood-red financial reports in both hands. His voice was hoarse, nearly broken when he said to me, "Amelia, I cannot hold on anymore. Everything will be lost." That was the moment I knew what I had to do. No one asked me, no promises were made. I clenched my teeth, sat down across from him, and for the first time, I said with all the steel I could summon, "I will save this company, even if it costs me everything." From that day on, I made Dawson Dynamics my home. I worked from 6 in the morning until well past midnight, every day, even on weekends. I devoured every old contract, analyzed every expense, tracked every dollar. I proactively slashed all unnecessary costs, starting with Anthony's limitless company credit card. I personally called clients who had left, begging for a chance to prove the company was still worth their trust. Many hung up after just one sentence. Many nights I broke down crying from exhaustion and humiliation. But I did not stop. Never. My mother, Lorraine, often advised me, my Leah, you need to rest. You cannot carry the whole company on your own forever." But I knew that if I let go, Dawson Dynamics would collapse immediately. And I could not let my father's blood-built legacy vanish because of Anthony's stupidity. Every day, I arrived at the office earlier than anyone and left later than everyone. I began to understand every operational process, every product, every major client. And painfully, I witnessed Anthony still swaggering around the company like some savior, joking with employees, throwing around hollow words about strategic vision, while I broke my back fighting real battles. I remember one time, while I was presenting a debt restructuring plan to the finance team, Anthony barged in, threw an arm around my shoulders in front of everyone and grinned broadly. "Leave it to me. I am the one who will take this company to the top." I just gave a cold smile. He had no idea that even the walls of the office were barely standing because I refused to give up for even a single day. But I did not crave recognition. I only needed the company to survive. And so, 6 months passed. I convinced 3 major clients to return. I negotiated with the bank to extend the loans. I streamlined the operation, cutting down from more than 60 employees to 35 elite staff. My old car broke down, and I did not even bother fixing it, riding the bus to work instead. Friends drifted away as I no longer had time for anyone. But I accepted it all. Because I believed, if I persisted long enough, I would save the family legacy. I once believed that. I did not realize, while I buried myself in relentless work, a dagger was being silently sharpened, waiting to plunge straight into my back. No one saw the nights I passed out asleep at my desk. No one witnessed the times I swallowed my tears after another client coldly rejected me. And of course, no one knew that with just one wrong signature, I could have lost everything I fought for. But I did not collapse. On the contrary, I turned Dawson Dynamics from a walking corpse into a resounding name in the tech industry, all within 5 years. I started by completely reshaping the company's services. We were no longer just another outdated IT consulting firm. I transformed Dawson Dynamics into a leader in digital transformation, developing proprietary software solutions, offering advanced data security, and cloud services for businesses. I recruited young talents, dreamers who were as tough as I was. I personally trained them, built a battle-hardened team, knowing we were wagering our entire future on every contract. The revenue of Dawson Dynamics steadily grew, from $1 million to $5 million, then $15 million in just 3 years. In the 4th year, we crossed the $50 million mark. By the 5th year, as I turned 30, Dawson Dynamics officially hit $100 million in revenue. With a presence in 3 major cities, San Diego, Dallas, and Chicago, and over 400 employees. I should have been proud. I should have been recognized. But no. At every family party, every toast to success, my father, Samuel, would turn to Anthony and laugh heartily. "Well done, son. The company hit 100 million thanks to your business instincts." I sat there, gripping my glass tightly, hiding the bitterness rising in my chest. Every time, Anthony would give a fake modest shrug. Just lucky, Dad." But his eyes gleamed with undisguised triumph. Lucky? He could not even tell the difference between net cash flow and gross profit. I remember one year-end gathering, my mother Lorraine gently pulled me aside and whispered, "You have to understand, your father, he is traditional. He believes the eldest son must lead the family. Deep down, he surely knows you did everything." I only smiled. A dry, hollow smile. Knows. If he knew, why had he never once acknowledged it publicly? Not once. Inside the company, Anthony still acted as the face of the brand, only showing up for photo ops and ribbon cuttings. But in the real boardrooms, when deals needed signing, when projects ran into crises, it was me and my team fighting in the trenches. I still remember that afternoon, during the National Client Conference, I stood presenting for over an hour, detailing every strategy for market expansion. When I finished, the entire auditorium gave a standing ovation. But when Anthony walked onto the stage, delivering a few empty lines about commitment to innovation, the cameras immediately turned toward him. The next day, newspapers were filled with headlines. Anthony Dawson, the new generation CEO, leading Dawson Dynamics to the world stage. I read those articles in silence. I had no time for anger, I had too much work to do. Because I knew, if I stopped, if I let anger consume me, everything I had built would collapse instantly. I had grown used to being pushed out of the spotlight. But some nights, when it was just me and the starry sky outside the office window, I would wonder, was it worth it? Were all these sacrifices truly worth it? Then I would shake my head and answer myself. No one could ever take away the truth that I had saved this company. No one. Even so, deep inside I began to realize something. My loyalty to this family was a double-edged sword. They never saw me as an heir. They saw me as a tool, a necessary cog to keep Dawson Dynamics ticking so they could proudly show it off. I remember that evening, after a long day of project meetings with clients from New York, I dropped by my parents' house for dinner. Anthony had just returned from another luxury vacation, his skin tanned, a brand new Rolex gleaming on his wrist, undoubtedly paid for by the company account. My father laughed heartily. "Look at your brother. That business blood runs strong. one big deal and a week of vacation to celebrate. I sat silently, swallowing a mouthful of cold meat. No one mentioned me, no one asked about my New York project. No one cared that I had spent 3 sleepless nights securing a $12 million contract. And in that moment, I realized a cold truth. No matter what I did, no matter how many contracts I brought in their eyes, I would always be the girl standing behind Anthony. I did not cry, I did not rage. I just sat there, looking around the room filled with the people who were supposed to love me most, and made a silent promise to myself. One day I would leave this cage, and when I flew away, I would take everything that truly mattered with me. They say that when you live among wolves, you either grow fangs or get torn apart. I chose to grow fangs. I would never let myself be caught off guard again. From the day I understood my real place in the family, I began to prepare silently. No sound. No sign. Every move I made was calculated, like a move in a life-or-death chess game that only I knew was being played. First, I began gathering evidence. Patiently and ruthlessly. Every time Anthony splurged company money on lavish vacations, I secretly extracted credit card statements. Every time he signed a bad deal just to collect secret commissions from partners, I quietly photocopied the entire document and stored it in an offline hard drive. Triple locked, with passwords. Even the shady emails he sent, I set up an automatic backup system before he could delete them. I did not expose him immediately. I waited. I let it all stack up, layer upon layer, until the file on Anthony weighed nearly 300 pages. My father, Samuel, still blindly trusted his eldest son. He had no idea that with just one small move from me, Anthony's entire career, reputation, and even freedom could crumble overnight. But evidence alone was not enough. I needed a stronger weapon, real power. So I quietly planned to buy company shares. Every dollar I earned from projects, I did not squander like Anthony. I lived as modestly as possible, renting an old 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, cooking my own meals, commuting in a battered, old Civic. Every month, I set aside 70% of my income to acquire Dawson Dynamics shares through anonymous trusts so no one would suspect a thing. Some younger shareholders were eager to sell their stakes cheaply, believing Dawson Dynamics was just a stagnant family company with no long-term future. I bought them all. 4 years after starting this journey, when I checked my investment portfolio, I smirked coldly. I now owned 40% of Dawson Dynamics. No one knew, not Anthony, not my father, not anyone. They still thought I was just the hardworking little girl, the shadow behind the genius, Anthony. And I let them believe it. But I did not stop there. I'd built my own relationships with key clients, something Anthony had never cared to do. I was the one flying directly to New York, San Francisco, Miami, shaking hands with each strategic partner. I listened to their needs, shared visions, and solved their toughest problems. I did not make empty promises like Anthony. I delivered results, until major corporations and even the pickiest clients demanded specifically, "We want to work with Amelia." I remember once, Mr. Robert Keller, the chief technology officer of a Fortune 500 financial group, shook my hand at a contract signing and whispered, "You are the real reason we continue working with Dawson Dynamics. Do not let anyone stand in your way." I simply smiled. He had no idea that I was not just building relationships. I was paving my own escape route. I also established a loyal network of tech and HR partners. The best talents I recruited into Dawson Dynamics signed contracts through a staffing firm I secretly created, Dawson Talent Solutions. On paper, they worked for the parent company, but with just one call from me, they would be ready to move instantly. And so, quietly, I built a fortress right inside enemy territory. Every brick, every wall was laid by my own hands. And all I needed was to wait for the right moment. There were nights I sat alone in the office, gazing at the city lights outside, whispering to myself, "Keep underestimating me, because when the storm comes, you will not even see it coming." Everything was meticulously prepared over 4 years, down to the smallest detail. With patience, cunning, and the silent consumption of betrayal's bitterness, I finished building the perfect trap. I did not know the exact day Anthony would make his move. But I knew for sure he would. Those who grow up entitled and spoiled never willingly share real power. And when that moment arrived, and would not need to fight, I would only need to gently push and everything would collapse at my feet. That night, I sat alone in my small suburban apartment, staring at the bright glow of my laptop screen in the darkness. To the outside world, I had just been shoved into the pit of disgrace. But they had no idea that at the very moment they threw me out like garbage, I had already placed my hand on the trigger. It was time to settle all debts. No one would escape. Especially Anthony. I unlocked the offline hard drive where I had stored all the documents I had collected over 5 years. Every fraudulent invoice, every shady deal email, and most importantly, the surveillance videos I had secretly installed in Anthony's office long ago. When you are the one who designed the entire internal security system, you know exactly where to hide back doors that no one can find. I played one of the videos. The cold voice echoing in the silent room. "I need the complete list of Dawson Dynamics top-tier clients," a strange man's voice whispered. Anthony's voice responded mockingly. "No problem. Transfer half to my Cayman account first, the rest after I deliver the data." I smirked. Exactly what I needed. No excuse could ever cover up the betrayal of clients and the severe violation of business ethics. That very night, I compiled a complete file and sent it to the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Subject: Reporting insider trading and business ethics violations by Anthony Dawson. I attached all the evidence: emails, invoices, secret contracts, hidden camera footage. Not a single piece was missing. Below the report, I wrote only 4 words. Please take action. Phase 1 of the plan was complete. Now came Phase 2, destroying his fake kingdom from the inside. Monday morning, exactly at 8:59, I sat in front of my laptop, a steaming cup of coffee beside me, my heart beating slowly but steadily. On the screen, the remote control software window displayed Dawson Dynamics Internal Network. I still had access, the ultimate power that Anthony and the puppet board of directors had no clue about. The clock ticked to 9 o'clock sharp. At that moment, I sent the activation command. In the new CEO's office, meaning Anthony's office, the computer screen lit up. Not the Windows interface. Not the business plan dashboard. But a video of him selling client data to a competitor playing on full screen, with the keyboard locked, impossible to shut off. The audio echoed through every corner of the top floor. "As long as you transfer the money on time, they will never know they were sold out." Anthony panicked, slamming the keyboard, yanking the power cord, but it was useless. I had programmed the system to ensure that once it started, it would only stop when someone took responsibility. But that was just the beginning. Less than 5 minutes later, Anthony's phone started ringing off the hook. First, it was a call from the internal legal department. Then from his private lawyer. Then from my father, Samuel Dawson. I knew exactly what those calls were about. The SEC had received the complaint with full evidence and immediately launched an investigation. Not just Anthony. Dawson Dynamics as a whole was now under scrutiny. The company's internal network descended into chaos. Emergency emails were sent out one after another, warning of breaches and demanding a halt to all financial transactions. I switched to the security camera feed. Anthony was screaming, smashing his laptop on the floor, his face flushed with rage. Outside the office, employees were murmuring. Small groups formed, gossiping, taking pictures of the video still playing across the entire floor. At 9:30, 2 agents wearing black suits walked through Dawson Dynamics' main entrance, flashing their FBI badges at the front desk. I smiled. Exactly as planned. Following behind them was a representative from the SEC, carrying a search warrant, demanding the seizure of all data storage devices related to insider trading and Anthony's personal accounts. When Anthony saw them, His face turned from red to deathly pale in an instant. He screamed into the phone, calling my father. "Dad, save me, this is a setup. Amelia trapped me." But no one was listening to him anymore. Samuel was too busy saving himself. Because what they did not know was that in the file sent to the SEC, I had also included evidence that Samuel had known about, and covered up, Anthony's illegal activities, for years. At 9:45, Sarah, my loyal assistant, and the only person I still trusted inside Dawson Dynamics, texted me. "It started. They are panicking. The stock exchange has suspended Dawson Dynamics trading." I took a sip of coffee, gazing out at the clear blue sky beyond the window, feeling as calm as if I were just watching a movie whose ending I already knew. The war had begun. All I needed was the truth, the sharpest and most ruthless weapon. And I knew for certain, those who had brought me down that day would never rise again. The news exploded within a single morning. FBI raids. Dawson Dynamics headquarters. CEO Anthony Dawson accused of selling client information and insider trading. Dawson Dynamics stock plummets uncontrollably. Financial news outlets raced to report. The entire market was shaken. Partners who once shook hands and laughed with Anthony now fell into dead silence or hurriedly severed ties. Every headline was a punch to the smug face my family had built over 3 decades. That afternoon, Dawson Dynamics stock was officially suspended, after dropping more than 62% in just a few hours. Small investors dumped their shares like a panicked crowd fleeing a burning building. I still sat there, in my modest apartment, calmly watching everything unfold exactly as planned. Without pity, without hesitation. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, the FBI officially escorted Anthony out of the company headquarters, in front of hundreds of employees, partners, and reporters. The sight of him in a wrinkled suit, wrists handcuffed, head bowed under the flash of cameras, that was an image I would remember forever. A perfect portrait for Judgment Day. But it was not over yet. Immediately after Anthony's arrest, Dawson Dynamics Board of Directors held an emergency meeting. It did not take long for them to unanimously vote to remove Anthony from his CEO position. But when they tried to save the company, they discovered another horrifying truth. Dawson Dynamics was now nothing but an empty shell. I had prepared for this moment long ago. Remember? I had quietly set up Dawson Innovation Solutions, a subsidiary that legally owned all the intellectual property, patents, core software, and strategic client data. On paper, Dawson Dynamics was merely a service leasing unit, and that lease agreement had been unilaterally terminated by me just 1 week ago. The moment Anthony was arrested, all crucial data, core software, and 80% of key clients were automatically transferred to Dawson Innovation Solutions. I received a message from Sarah, the person I had placed inside to monitor the situation. They discovered the intellectual property is gone. The board is panicking. Major clients are canceling contracts en masse. The entire development department resigned this morning. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a cold satisfaction flood my body. I did not need to destroy Dawson Dynamics by hand. I just needed to extract its soul and let the corpse rot slowly in the daylight. The next day, on economic news outlets, bright red headlines blazed. Dawson Dynamics faces bankruptcy after losing all intellectual property and core clients. Subsidiary Dawson Innovation Solutions announces merger with all strategic partners. I did not speak out. I did not accept interviews. I let the media paint the story, a silent genius, a classic corporate coup in the tech world. Meanwhile, Anthony faced 12 criminal charges including client data selling, money laundering, and insider trading. If convicted, he would face a prison sentence ranging from 15 to 25 years. Not only Anthony. The FBI also launched an investigation into my father, Samuel Dawson, for his involvement in concealing financial crimes. Under public pressure and federal scrutiny, my father quickly resigned as chairman of the board, submitting a request for immunity in exchange for cooperating as a witness. A humiliating end for both father and son. That night, I drove past the old headquarters of Dawson Dynamics. The building that once glittered with lights was now pitch dark, with only a few security guards silently patrolling. I pulled over to the curb, lowered the window, and looked up at the rows of darkened windows. No lights, no laughter. Only the ghost of a once mighty empire. I whispered. Like a final farewell. You built this empire on lies, and it was those very lies that devoured you. I shifted gears and let the car glide into the cold night of San Diego. Ahead of me, a new road stretched open. A road that I would shape myself. No father, no brother. Only me, and what I had earned by my own hands. 3 days after Dawson Dynamics officially declared bankruptcy, I received a call from an unknown number. I did not need to answer, to know who it was. I let the phone ring until the 4th time before picking up, my voice as calm as if answering an insurance survey. Who was this? My mother's trembling voice, Lorraine, came through. Amelia, please. Listen to me. I closed my eyes for a second, suppressing the surge of anger in my chest. I have no time for explanations, Mother, I replied flatly. If you want to meet, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, at my office. Do not be late. I hung up before she could plead further. The next morning, exactly at 10 o'clock, my parents stepped into the grand lobby of Foster Innovation Solutions, the magnificent building I had secretly purchased long ago. They walked slowly, looking small and broken under the soaring ceiling. No longer the proud founders. No longer the confident stature. Only two aging, defeated people clinging to fading hopes. They sat across from me in the glass-walled conference room, where sunlight illuminated every deep wrinkle on my father Samuel Dawson's face. He looked at me, his eyes full of regret, something I had once desperately longed to see, but now only felt coldness. My daughter, my father began, his voice raspy. I know I was wrong. But you are family. Family must forgive each other, right? I folded my arms across my chest, staring at him blankly. Family? What kind of family watches their own be betrayed and applauds? He lowered his head. My mother, tears streaming down her face, clutched my hand and begged. Amelia, we have lost everything. We are broke. Even the house is being foreclosed by the bank. Please, save us. I stayed silent for a few seconds, letting them drown in their despair. Then I slid a thick folder across the table. This is the only offer, I said evenly. You will sell me all remaining shares of Dawson Dynamics at the original purchase price, no interest. In return, I will cover your bank debts and ensure you have a place to live for the rest of your lives. My father's eyes lit up with hope. But I was not finished. On the conditions. 1. Sign a strict confidentiality agreement about all past illegal activities. 2. Completely withdraw from any future business activities. 3. The rescue fund will be managed by a trust, with limited monthly spending. Samuel Dawson's face turned purple. You do not trust your own parents? I leaned on the table, locking eyes with him, every word slicing like a blade. You taught me that trust is a luxury in this family. My mother sobbed harder. My father slammed his fist on the table but then let it fall limp, like an old warrior who had run out of strength. Why? My father whispered hoarsely. Why must you be so ruthless? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Not for you. For the 10-year-old girl who once believed her father could do anything. For the little girl who deserved, just once, to stand up and save herself. The room fell into silence. Outside, the city buzzed on, indifferent to the downfall of a once invincible family. At last, my parents signed all the documents. Their hands shook, like those being expelled from their own world. I gathered the files, stood up, and signaled the security team outside. 2 men in black suits entered, politely escorting my parents out of the building. Just before stepping through the glass door, my father turned back, eyes bloodshot. Amelia, no matter what, you're still my daughter. I only gave a faint smile, saying nothing. When they disappeared beyond the glass doors, I finally unclenched my hand, which had turned white from gripping too tightly. I knew I had just severed the last tie binding me to the past. No more chains to betrayal, favoritism, or empty promises. I was no longer the weak Amelia dreaming of her ideal father's hugs. I was the woman who rose from the ashes, rebuilding everything with my own blood, tears, and iron will. And I swore, no one would ever take anything from me again. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye, but the mark I left behind would never fade. Foster Innovation Solutions, the name I chose to rebuild my dream from the ruins of Dawson Dynamics, had now become a billion-dollar tech conglomerate, leading the fields of digital transformation and enterprise data security. We are present in 8 countries, have more than 1,500 employees, and serve some of the most powerful names in the Fortune 500. Every time I walk into the headquarters, a modern glass building in the heart of San Diego, I remember the day I left Dawson Dynamics, with nothing but empty hands and a deep wound in my heart. And I know, everything I have today did not come from luck or favoritism. It was forged by my own hands and unwavering determination. And what about Anthony? After a trial that lasted more than 1 year, Anthony Dawson was sentenced to 2 years in prison for insider trading and financial fraud. Upon his release, with such a notorious criminal record, he had no chance left in the tech industry. It is said he now works as a bartender at a mid-range bar in Las Vegas, serving gamblers who lose themselves all night long. A tragic ending for someone who once boasted himself as a business genius at extravagant parties. I never went to see him. I did not need to see him even once to know that justice had been served, in the most perfect way. And what about my parents? They live quietly in a small retirement home in Florida, living off a monthly stipend from the trust fund I set up. No one mentions the name Samuel Dawson in the business world anymore. He, once a symbol of tech consulting excellence, has become a sad cautionary tale of favoritism and blindness. I occasionally receive a few Christmas cards from my mother, containing belated apologies. I do not reply. I do not harbor hatred. I simply do not care anymore. My life now belongs to new values: integrity, effort, and the ambition to lead with intellect, not bloodline. And on one sunny March day, I received an invitation from my old school, UCLA, Anderson School of Management, where I once studied, to come back and speak at the annual business festival. The topic assigned to me? The importance of integrity in family business. As I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight hit me, reflecting hundreds of young student faces, and I could not help but smile. Just 5 years ago I sat out there too, carrying dreams and a vague fear of the future. I started my speech not with grand numbers or personal achievements, but with a story. I once believed that family would always stand by you when you did the right thing. I once believed that justice would prevail on its own. But life taught me a bitter lesson. It is often those you love the most who push you off the cliff the fastest. And only when you stand up on your own 2 feet, without depending, without waiting for recognition, are you truly free. The auditorium fell into complete silence. I looked at the eyes watching me, filled with admiration, respect, and a hunger to learn. I knew this moment was not just another speech. It was proof of my victory, a resounding triumph not over others, but over the wounds they once inflicted. When I finished the speech, the applause was thunderous and unending. But what satisfied me more was knowing that somewhere in this room, another young woman, just like I once was, would realize that she deserved more than what family or society tried to impose on her. As I left the hall, a final year student approached, eyes shining. "Amelia, how did you manage to stand up after everything that happened?" I smiled, lightly squeezing his shoulder. By never forgetting, I was not fighting to get revenge on them. I was fighting to save myself. The California sky that day was brilliantly blue, sunshine flooding every road leading to the ocean. I walked forward, heart light and free. Because in the end, after everything, I did not just reclaim my career, my honor, and my future. I reclaimed Amelia Dawson, the strongest, most invincible, and freest version of myself I had ever dreamed of. The story of Amelia Dawson is proof that true recognition does not come from polite applause or favoritism, but from relentless courage and personal effort. Sometimes, the deepest wounds are the very force that drives us to build an empire stronger than any inherited legacy. In real life, success does not belong to those who demand fairness from others, but to those who rise from injustice, persevere, and write their own destiny. What do you think about Amelia's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And do not forget to follow the channel to catch more inspiring stories about life and family relationships. I never thought I'd hear those words come out of my own mother's mouth. She's stronger and more deserving than you, Amelia. The sentence rang through the silence, cutting through every belief and hope I'd ever held about my family. My mother, the woman I had spent years loving and respecting, stood next to Mark, the man I had loved for 3 years, and said I wasn't good enough, not strong enough to deserve him. I froze. I couldn't move. It happened during my cousin's graduation party. Mark had gone to get us some drinks, and I just wanted to find him to give him a surprise kiss. But instead, I stumbled upon that conversation between him and my mom. It was a moment I could never forget. Amelia's always been the weak one, Mom continued, her voice light, like she was just talking about her favorite dish. You need someone who can push you forward in life, not someone who always leans on others. Neither Mark nor I knew what to say, but when I looked into his eyes I saw it. Hesitation, confusion. He didn't defend me. He didn't laugh off the comment. He just stood there, silent. And in that moment, I felt the deepest kind of pain. That's when it all started, the moment I heard words that felt like blades to the heart. And from there I realized everything I once believed to be solid in my life could come crashing down. Love, family, relationships, none of them were what I thought. Those words echoed in my mind, keeping me awake at night, making it impossible to find a reason to keep fighting. I didn't want to believe what I'd just heard, not from my mother, not from Mark, and definitely not about our love. But then, I started to notice the subtle changes, the signs I couldn't ignore. Mark began mentioning Elizabeth, my sister, in every story. He talked about her accomplishments at work, her dedication to her weight loss journey, and every time he did, it felt like a small cut across my heart. Then one day, everything exploded. I found out he was dating Elizabeth. Yes, exactly that. A moment I couldn't come to terms with. I stood there, watching Mark and my sister in his apartment, on his bed, completely unaware that I was about to walk in. They weren't even surprised when I showed up. They just stood up, their faces void of any shame, like what they were doing was completely normal. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things like in the movies. The rage boiled inside me, but I just walked away, silent, feeling like everything I had was crumbling. When I confronted my mother, the lack of remorse in her eyes was the final blow I couldn't bear. She said Elizabeth deserved him more, because she was strong and had a stable career. She told me I was weak, not capable of making it in life. I couldn't accept that. I couldn't stay in a family that didn't see my worth. But I didn't know what to do. I had loved Mark. I had loved my family. But standing in that kitchen, I knew it was over. And I decided I wouldn't come back. The next day, I couldn't even face my mother. I didn't know why, but thinking about her words lit a fire inside me. Quiet, but burning, and I knew I had to act. I couldn't keep living in a world where I was invisible. Couldn't bear the pity in my family's eyes, as if I was too weak to live my own life. I had loved Mark, truly, but he betrayed me in a way I never saw coming. The image of him and Elizabeth in that room haunted me. The feeling of being discarded, replaced like I was nothing. And my mother, the one I trusted the most, took their side. I couldn't accept that. I couldn't keep living like this, being treated as worthless in my own family. I don't remember exactly what I did. I just know I left the house in silence. A cold numbness took over my body, but I didn't regret it. I drove all night, with no destination, no plan, just the urge to escape and start over. Not because I was scared, but because I needed to find myself again. Chicago. That's where I ended up. The city, full of life and bright lights, felt like the place where I might find a new chance. I didn't have much money, just an old car and a few belongings. That was all I had, after 3 years of security with Mark and my family. All I needed now was a new beginning. I didn't need anyone's forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. I just needed to live for myself. On my first day in Chicago, I found a small room in a run-down boarding house. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't comfortable, but it was enough for me to rest and start thinking about my next steps. Everything was unfamiliar, but I wasn't scared. Maybe I had gotten used to the loneliness, but this time, it meant something different. Loneliness no longer terrified me, it became a chance to rediscover who I was. In the days that followed, I started looking for work. I didn't have a college degree, no impressive experience, just a few years as a legal assistant. But I'd learned that sometimes, opportunity doesn't come from what you know, but from your willingness to try. I tried everything: waitressing, retail, anything that would bring some stability. Every day I gave myself a new goal. I learned to live alone. Learned to care for myself without anyone's help. I didn't need my mother. I didn't need Mark. I just needed to get back on my feet and walk my own path. A month later, I landed my first job at a coffee shop. It wasn't great, the pay was low, but it was enough to support myself. I started over with the smallest things, met new people, and began to feel like I could finally take control of my life. Even when I was exhausted, I reminded myself that nothing was impossible, as long as I was determined. Then one day, while I was working at the cafe, a customer walked in and sat by the window. He was a middle-aged man, well-dressed, looked like someone successful. He ordered a cup of coffee, glanced at the menu, then turned to me. "Have you been working here long?" he asked, his voice gentle but full of interest. "Just about a month," I replied, trying to stay calm, though I still felt a bit uneasy inside. "Have you ever thought about switching jobs?" he continued. I looked at him, unsure why he was asking that. But after a moment of thought, I realized I couldn't keep living in the past. Couldn't let bad memories control my life anymore. I wanted to change. I wanted to seek new opportunities. "Actually, I've been thinking about a new opportunity," I said, feeling like a new fire had been lit inside me. The man smiled and handed me a business card. "If you'd like to try something new, I work for a company that's looking for a project manager. This is my number. Call me if you want to know more." I took the card, feeling like I had just found a spark of light in the darkness. I didn't know what would come next, but at least I knew I could take control of my future. No more weak words from my mother, no more relationships that had hurt me. I had one chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. After that day, I called the man and asked about the job he mentioned. The interview was quick, and just a week later I got a job offer. The work wasn't easy, but I felt like I was finally on the right path. I started learning about project management, working with teams, and slowly realized I was capable of things I never dared to dream before. I remembered those days when I used to think I wasn't strong enough, not good enough, but now, each day I felt more confident. I no longer lived in my mother's shadow, or in the shadow of the past. I was Amelia, and I had the right to decide my own life. The first few weeks in Chicago weren't easy at all. Even though I'd decided to start over, the feeling of being lost didn't leave me. The tiny room I rented in an old neighborhood wasn't what I had pictured when I thought of this city. Everything was unfamiliar, and I felt like I was walking a foggy path, with no clear destination. But I knew I couldn't go back. I had made my choice. Chicago would be the place I rebuilt my life, no matter how hard it got. I found a new job at a small media company, starting as an assistant. Everything was new and full of challenges. I didn't have much experience in this field, but I worked hard, learning bit by bit. Every day I faced new challenges, and every day I realized I could overcome them. I was no longer the weak girl abandoned by her family and lover. I was Amelia, and I could do this. During those first months, I slowly got used to the job, the new co-workers, and the new rules. Even without any support from family, I felt like I was finding a clearer path. Maybe that's what I needed. A chance to stand on my own feet, without relying on anyone else. Then one day, while attending an event organized by the company, I met Patrick. He was a business partner of the company, someone I hadn't met before. At first I thought he was just a regular man, but once he started talking to me I felt something different. He wasn't like anyone I'd met before. He had a calmness, a way of thinking I'd never seen in anyone. "Have you worked here long?" Patrick asked as we stood watching a business strategy presentation. "I've only been here a few months," I replied, feeling a little shy, since I didn't know him. "So, what do you think about the company?" he continued, his eyes lighting up like he genuinely cared. "I think it's a great place to learn and grow," I answered, my words sounding a little stronger than usual. Strangely, I felt comfortable talking to him. "You seem very determined," Patrick said, smiling. "If you'd like, I can help connect you with people in the industry. Sometimes, the right help at the right time can change your entire career path." I was a little surprised by his offer, but didn't say much. Just thanked him and smiled. Not long after, we continued talking about work, about changes in the industry, and I realized I had gotten caught up in the conversation without even noticing. He wasn't like anyone I'd met. He wasn't flashy, wasn't calculating, just a decent, intelligent, and sincere man. Gradually, Patrick became someone I turned to when I needed help at work. He never made me feel small. In fact, he encouraged me to grow. Not just in my career, but in life. Every time we talked about work, I felt more mature, more confident. He didn't just help my career, he helped me rediscover myself. Our conversations weren't just about work. We started sharing more. About life struggles, dreams, and failures. He wasn't just a business partner, he became a friend, someone I felt I could trust. Honestly, I never thought anyone could understand me the way he did. One evening, while we were working late at the office, Patrick turned to me, his eyes full of care. "Amelia, you don't have to do everything alone. Sometimes, sharing with others is a way to move forward," he said, his voice gentle but firm. I didn't answer right away. His words touched something inside me that I had been hiding for so long. I didn't want to rely on anyone. Didn't want to be hurt again. But I also realized that being independent didn't always mean being completely alone. "Thank you, Patrick," I said, trying not to let my voice shake. "But I still need to prove I can do this." He smiled, his gaze warm, as if he understood every thought in my mind. "You've already done it, you don't need to prove anything else, you just need to believe in yourself," Patrick said, then turned back to his work. Day by day I started to see that I had changed. I was no longer the weak girl I once was. I had found confidence. In my work, in life, and in myself. Patrick had helped me a lot. Not just in my job but in helping me overcome the pain of the past. Life in Chicago no longer felt lonely. Slowly, I felt like I had found my place here, and no one could take that away from me. Patrick became an important part of my life, and I knew I couldn't imagine living without him. Our relationship grew deeper. Every moment we spent together I felt like we were building a solid future, not just work, but love, shared moments, and peace amid the chaos of life. One evening, after a stressful week at work, Patrick took me out to dinner. We went to a small restaurant near downtown, the kind that served my favorite dishes. He hadn't said anything about us, yet. But I could feel the change in his eyes, the care he showed me. As we sat across from each other, he looked at me and said, "Amelia, I think we've come a long way, and I just want to say, I feel very lucky to have you in my life." Those words made my heart beat faster. I didn't know how to respond. I just knew I felt the same. My new life in Chicago, which had started with pain and hardship, had now become one full of hope and opportunity. And Patrick, who had helped me find myself again, was someone I would always trust and cherish. My life had changed continuously since I decided to start over in Chicago. After working with Patrick for several months, we decided to launch a sustainable investment company together. A company we believed would not only generate profit, but also bring positive impact to the community. Our company didn't just focus on numbers, but also on environmental protection and long-term sustainability. When we started, I was just a woman with passion and ambition, but no experience in building a company. Patrick helped me a lot in the early stages. He had strategic vision, the ability to analyze markets and negotiate with investors. I handled market research, project development, and partner outreach. We complemented each other perfectly. The first few months were tough. Our company only had a few employees and everything started from scratch, but I learned something important. Patience and determination are the keys to success. Every day I gave it my all. Whether it was long nights, tense meetings, or tough negotiations with demanding clients, I never gave up. I remembered how I used to be weak, afraid, but now, I was different. I was Amelia, and I was ready to face the challenges. Gradually, our company began to achieve significant milestones. We attracted major investors, signed important contracts, and slowly built a name in the industry. The hard early days were behind us, and I could feel the change within myself. I wasn't just financially independent, I was building a life to be proud of. Patrick was always by my side, not just as a business partner, but as a trusted friend. Our relationship grew deeper. He helped me not only at work, but was also someone I could share everything with. We spent time together, whether working or simply strolling through the city, talking about future plans. He was the first person who made me feel truly valued, not because of what I achieved, but simply because I was myself. One day, while we were sitting in the office, Patrick looked at me seriously. "Melly, you've come so far," he said. "You've become the kind of woman I've always believed in. I'm so proud of you." A warm feeling spread through me. Even though I had heard compliments from him before, this time it carried a much deeper meaning. Patrick wasn't just someone I worked with. He was someone who had witnessed my transformation, who had believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. I didn't know where the future would take me, but one thing I knew for sure. I had a job I loved, a partner I could trust, and a life of freedom and independence. The struggles and hardships had made me stronger, and I was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. But there was something still lingering in my heart, something I couldn't quite let go of. It was the past. Even though I had built a new life in Chicago, the old wounds hadn't completely healed. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark, the people who hurt and abandoned me, were still present in my mind. I always felt like something was missing, like I hadn't truly escaped the past. Then one day, I received a letter. It was from my mother. I saw her name on the envelope, and an indescribable feeling rose within me. I hadn't heard from my family in a long time. My mother hadn't contacted me since I left, and I hadn't tried to reach out either. This letter felt like an invitation, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it. "Amelia, my daughter. We've gone years without seeing each other. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I know you've built a new life and I don't want to interfere. But I hope you can forgive me and we can start over. I miss you very much." The words in that letter felt like a call home, a pull toward the past I had tried so hard to leave behind. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't keep running forever. I had built a new life. But could I truly move forward if I never faced the past? I decided to meet my mother. Not because I wanted to go back, but because I needed to face it. I couldn't live in fear anymore, torn between moving on and looking back. Patrick supported me fully. He understood that facing the past was something I needed to truly grow. When I met my mother, we sat across from each other in a small cafe. She looked older, but her eyes were just the same, filled with love and regret. "Amelia, I'm so sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "I was wrong and I can't change the past. But I'm sorry for not standing by you. You were so strong and independent. I didn't understand you." Her words made me choke up. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, listening, feeling everything she was trying to express. For the first time in years, I felt the truth in her apology. But I couldn't let the past hold me back anymore. Whether she apologized or not, I had a new life now. And I wasn't going back. I sighed, then smiled. "Mom, I forgave you a long time ago. But I've taken a different path and I can't return. I've built a life I'm proud of, and I want to keep moving forward." She looked at me, eyes full of regret, but said nothing more. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. It was time for me to keep moving, not just for myself, but for everything I had built. As I stepped out of the cafe, I felt like I had finally closed a chapter of my past, and I knew, even though some things can never be changed, I would keep moving forward. With the people who truly believed in and loved me. And with a future I had built, with my own hands. The 1-year anniversary celebration of my company had been planned for a long time, but I didn't expect to feel so many mixed emotions leading up to today. It had been a long time since I last saw my mother, Elizabeth, and Mark. The simple reason was, I no longer needed them. I no longer needed to endure their judgment, their comparisons, or their insults. But today I invited them. Not for revenge, but to show them that I was no longer the weak girl they once thought I was. But today I invited them. Not for revenge, but to show them that I was no longer the weak girl they once thought I was. Patrick had been by my side throughout this entire journey. We built our company on sustainable principles, and now, the company was thriving. We had achieved successes I could have never imagined back when I was still living in the shadow of my family. But as I made the decision to invite them to this party, I couldn't stop thinking about the betrayal I had endured in the past. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark had no idea I had married Patrick, or that I was running a successful company. They would see me differently now, and I would not let them make me feel guilty or ashamed. As the day of the event approached, I spent a lot of time preparing. The anticipation grew stronger as I imagined the scene that would unfold that evening. I had chosen an upscale restaurant with a spacious venue, soft lighting and gentle music, perfect for creating an elegant atmosphere to impress every guest. But I couldn't stop thinking about my mother and my family. They wouldn't know that I had built everything with my own hands, without their help. I once believed I needed them, but now, I was stronger and standing on my own 2 feet. That night I wore an emerald green dress, simple yet elegant, with my hair neatly tied back and light makeup that still radiated confidence. Patrick stood beside me, always smiling and looking at me with pride. For him, this party wasn't just a celebration of success, it was a declaration that we had come a long way, from hard beginnings to becoming people we could be proud of. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark arrived late. My mother wore a sleek black dress, but her eyes scanned me as if searching for something different. Elizabeth had a faint smile on her lips, but she couldn't hide the curiosity in her gaze. Mark was silent, his eyes filled with unease. As they walked in, a strange feeling stirred in my chest. Despite everything I had been through, seeing them again still felt like stepping into battle. I looked at my mother and Elizabeth, 2 people I once loved and trusted, and a wave of indescribable emotion rose within me. I was no longer the weak girl they believed would never make it. I was Amelia. A self-made woman who had built her success without leaning on anyone. Patrick looked at me as if silently asking if I was okay. I smiled at him, then walked toward my mother and family. "Mom, Elizabeth, Mark," I began, my voice calm but firm. "Hello. Thank you for coming." My mother looked at me with surprise, her eyes widening slightly, but she quickly regained her cold composure, as if she no longer recognized me. Elizabeth stood beside her, smiling faintly, though I could see the tension in her eyes. "Amelia, you look beautiful," my mother said, her voice trying to remain steady. "You've done better than I expected." I looked at her, unsure what to say. But instead of reacting the way I once would have, I simply smiled and said, "Thank you, Mom. It's been a part of my journey." Elizabeth stepped forward with a polite smile. "We're glad you've succeeded. You must have accomplished a lot these past few years." I sensed the subtle contempt in her tone, but I didn't let it shake me. "Yes, I've done quite a bit. Thank you for your concern," I replied, keeping my emotions in check. Mark stood quietly beside them, his eyes on me, but he said nothing. At that moment, I realized he was no longer the man I loved, no longer someone I wanted to share a life with. He had left me to chase a different life. But that no longer mattered. I didn't need him, and I didn't need validation from him or anyone else in that family. The party continued, and slowly, the tension in the air began to ease. Patrick and I mingled with our guests, sharing our projects and plans for the future. Everyone seemed impressed by our company, and I could feel the difference in how they saw me, completely different from how my family had once viewed me. My mother and Elizabeth couldn't hide their shock at seeing me no longer dependent on them. They tried to appear composed, but I could sense the confusion in their eyes. Then, the moment came. As I introduced Patrick to everyone, my mother and Elizabeth couldn't hide their reaction. "This is Patrick, my husband," I said, locking eyes with my mother and Elizabeth, without a hint of hesitation. All three of them fell silent. My mother stared at me in shock, speechless. Elizabeth's mouth dropped open before she quickly tried to act normal. Mark just stood there, his face tense with discomfort. I didn't need to say anything more. I had seen all I needed to. The people I once loved and trusted were no longer capable of hurting me. I had everything I needed: Patrick, my company, and most importantly, myself. The party ended, and I didn't feel an ounce of loss. As my mother and Elizabeth left, I stood still, feeling free and at peace. I no longer had anything to prove. All I needed to do was live true to myself, without needing anyone's approval or recognition. Patrick stood beside me, looking at me with pride. "You did amazing, Amelia," he said, gently patting my hand. "We made it." I smiled, feeling like everything had finally fallen into place. Yes, we did. As the night drew to a close, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The laughter and compliments from guests faded into the background. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark sat in the corner of the room, their eyes occasionally drifting toward me, but none of them dared to look me in the eye. I knew they were trying to hide their shock, the confusion they could no longer conceal. My mother had always been a strong-willed woman, always believing she was right, but today she was no longer as confident as before. When I introduced Patrick as my husband, I could feel her gaze, like she was silently admitting that I was no longer the daughter she thought would always be weak and dependent on her. Elizabeth, the sister I once dreamed of being close to, stood there silently, just watching me, unsure of what to say. And Mark, the man I once loved, the man I gave my whole heart to, was now working under me, in the company I had built with my own hands. When I saw Mark, I couldn't help but think of the painful days, the harsh words he had said to me. He stood there, silent, tucked into a corner, not daring to face me. Even though he had walked away and found his own version of happiness, these people, my mother, Elizabeth, and Mark, still made me feel like I was facing a final exam. They thought I would always be the weak girl, but now I had shown them that I was stronger than they ever imagined. My mother, who had always protected Elizabeth and judged me as too soft, couldn't say a word. She just stood there, looking at me with eyes filled with both surprise and regret. Elizabeth, the sister my mother always favored, couldn't hide her discomfort. She didn't know how to react, seeing me in a position she never thought she'd witness from afar. Mark said nothing, just stood still, his eyes uneasy, unable to meet mine. Finally my mother spoke, her voice slightly choked but still trying to maintain composure. "Amelia, did you really do this? You built this entire company?" I turned to look at her, not with anger, just with quiet certainty. I gave her a soft smile, my eyes steady. Yes, Mom, I did. I built this company myself, and I didn't need anyone's help. She lowered her eyes, as if my words left her unsure how to respond. My mother had always believed Elizabeth, with her stable career and assertiveness, was the one destined for success. As for me, she had always seen me as the fragile one who couldn't stand on her own. But now, all of that had changed. Elizabeth didn't say anything, but her eyes couldn't hide her shock. I could see the confusion in her gaze, like she couldn't accept that I, the one she once considered weak, had overcome everything and achieved this level of success. She looked at me cautiously, almost as if she feared I might do something to hurt her. As for Mark, he couldn't stop looking at me. I could feel the shame in his eyes. He stood there, lips pressed together, silent. I didn't know exactly what he was thinking, but I could guess. He didn't believe in me. He chose Elizabeth, thinking she was stronger than me. And now, he had to face the reality that I hadn't just survived. I had succeeded, beyond all of them. None of them said another word. My mother didn't ask anything else. Elizabeth just looked down at the table, and Mark stayed frozen, unable to face me. The heaviness in the air gave me an odd sense of relief. Everything had changed. I hadn't needed them to succeed. I had proven to them that I could walk my own path, without anyone's support. But their surprise and confusion left me with a strange feeling. I had never needed their approval, so why did I feel a sense of emptiness seeing that they couldn't accept this? Was I still searching for their acknowledgement? Had I not truly let go of the past? I looked at Patrick, and he gave me a soft smile, as if he knew exactly what I was feeling. He always understood me, always believed in me, and I trusted him too. He was the one who helped me rediscover myself, who built this company with me, and most importantly, the one who made me believe that I could succeed without needing validation from anyone but myself. "Are you okay?" Patrick asked, his eyes filled with concern. I smiled, feeling the warmth he always gave me. "I'm okay, we did it, Patrick." He nodded, eyes full of pride. "I've always believed in you, Amelia." That feeling, of freedom and confidence, I had never felt it so clearly. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark might be stunned and confused, but I didn't need their approval. I had everything I needed: a new life, a wonderful partner, and most importantly, I had found myself again. As the party neared its end, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The laughter and compliments of the guests faded in my ears. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark sat in a corner, their eyes occasionally drifting toward me, but none of them dared to look directly at me. I knew they were trying to hide their surprise, the confusion they could no longer disguise. My mother had always been strong, always convinced she was right. But tonight she wasn't as sure of herself. When I introduced Patrick as my husband, I could feel her stare. It said I was no longer the dependent, fragile daughter she once believed I was. Elizabeth, the sister I once longed to love and share everything with, could only stand there in silence, watching me, unsure of what to say. And Mark, the man I once loved with all my heart, was now working beneath me in the company I had built from the ground up. Looking at Mark, I couldn't help but recall the painful days, the cruel words he once threw at me. He stood there without a word, quietly in the corner, avoiding eye contact. Even though he had left and found his own happiness, these people, my mother, Elizabeth, and Mark, still made me feel like I was being tested. They thought I would always be the weak girl, but now, I had proven I was stronger than they ever imagined. My mother, the one who always wanted to protect Elizabeth, and who always saw me as too soft, now had nothing to say. She just stood there looking at me with eyes full of both surprise and regret. Elizabeth, the sister my mother had always valued more than me, couldn't hide her discomfort. She didn't know how to react as she watched me standing in a place she'd never imagined she'd be looking up to. Mark said nothing, just stood silently, his worried eyes avoiding mine. Finally my mother spoke, her voice a little choked. though she tried to maintain her composure. Melia, did you really do all this? You built this entire company? I turned to look at her, not angry, just silently assured. I gave her a gentle smile, my gaze steady and calm. Yes, Mom, I did it. I built this company myself and I didn't need help from anyone. She lowered her eyes slightly, as if unsure how to respond. My mother had always believed that Elizabeth, with her stable career and assertive nature, was the one capable of achieving great things. And me? She always thought I'd remain a fragile girl, unable to stand on my own. But now, all of that had changed. Elizabeth didn't say a word, but her eyes couldn't hide the shock. I could see the confusion clearly, the disbelief that I, the one she had once labeled as weak, had risen above it all to achieve this level of success. She looked at me with caution, almost as if she was afraid I might do something to hurt her. As for Mark, he couldn't stop looking at me. I could feel the shame in his eyes. He stood there, lips pressed tight, silent. I didn't know exactly what was running through his mind, but I could guess. He didn't believe in me. He chose Elizabeth, the one he thought was stronger than me, and now, he had to face the reality that I didn't just survive, I had succeeded, beyond all of them. None of them said another word. My mother asked no further questions. Elizabeth kept her eyes downcast. Mark remained frozen, unable to face me. That suffocating silence oddly brought me a sense of relief. Everything had changed. I hadn't needed them to succeed. I had shown them I could walk my own path without anyone's help. But the surprise and confusion in their eyes stirred something unfamiliar in me. I had never needed their approval, so why did I feel this emptiness seeing them struggle to accept it? Was I still searching for their recognition? Had I not truly let go of the past? I looked at Patrick, and he gave me a soft smile, as if he knew exactly what I was feeling. He always understood me, always believed in me, and I trusted him too. He was the one who helped me find myself again, who built this company with me, and most importantly, who helped me believe that I could succeed without anyone's approval but my own. "Are you okay?" Patrick asked, his eyes filled with concern. I smiled, feeling his warmth. "I'm okay, we did it, Patrick." He nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "I've always believed in you, Amelia." That feeling. Freedom. And confidence. I had never felt it more clearly. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark might be confused and surprised, but I didn't need their recognition. I had everything I needed: a new life, a wonderful partner, and most importantly, I had found myself again. None of them said another word. My mother didn't ask anything else. Elizabeth just stared down at the table, and Mark remained silent, unable to face me. That stifling silence gave me a sense of release. Everything had changed. I hadn't needed them to succeed. I had proven that I could walk my own path without any help from my family. Yet the surprise and confusion in their eyes left me feeling something strange. I hadn't sought their approval, but why did I feel this emptiness when I saw that they couldn't accept it? Was I still looking for their acknowledgement? Had I not truly let go of the past? I looked at Patrick and he gave me a soft smile, as if he knew exactly what I was feeling. He always understood me, always believed in me, and I trusted him too. He was the one who helped me find myself again, who built this company with me, and most importantly, who made me believe that I could succeed without needing validation from anyone but myself. "Are you okay?" Patrick asked, his eyes full of concern. I smiled, feeling his warmth. "I'm okay, we did it, Patrick." He nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "I've always believed in you, Amelia." That feeling? Freedom and confidence, I had never felt it more clearly. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark might be confused and surprised, but I didn't need their acknowledgement. I had everything I needed. A new life, a wonderful partner, and most importantly, I had found myself again. The party was over, and the room had quieted down. The guests had all gone home, but I remained, staring blankly into the darkness outside the window. Everything now felt like a dream. I couldn't believe I had truly made it through. My mother, Elizabeth and Mark had all left in confusion and disbelief, and I didn't feel a single ounce of regret. But why did I still feel this emptiness inside? I wasn't seeking revenge. I didn't want to prove that I was right or that they were wrong for abandoning me. The only thing I ever wanted to prove was my own worth. All the hardship, the betrayal, from my mother, from Elizabeth, from Mark, had made me stronger, and I knew it was those very struggles that helped me grow. The only question that remained was, could I forgive them? I didn't know. I had tried to face the past, tried to understand why my mother made the choices she did, why Elizabeth was so greedy and blind to the hurt she caused. I had tried to understand why Mark betrayed me, even though we once had such a beautiful love. But all I found in that process was pity for myself and regret. They had hurt me, and I couldn't let them keep hurting me anymore. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want to live true to myself, I said to Patrick, as we sat together after the party. He sat beside me, reaching out to hold my hand, looking at me with that gentle gaze that always brought me peace. I know, Amelia. I understand. You've come such a long way. And what you did today wasn't to prove anything to anyone. It was for yourself. Patrick was right. I didn't need to prove anything to them, or anyone else. I had done what they never believed I could. I didn't need to rely on family or anyone to live my life. That was the freedom I had always been searching for, and now I realized that the wounds of the past were just a part of my journey, not something I had to carry forever. I didn't need to hold on to hatred. I didn't need to keep punishing myself. I just needed to live my truth. Patrick looked at me with loving eyes. He had always been the one who understood me best, who stood by me through the hardest times. He never pushed me to forgive, but he knew I had to find that answer for myself. "Do you want to talk to your mom?" Patrick asked, his voice gentle but full of care. "I know you've been thinking a lot about it." I shook my head, a lump rising in my throat. I already met with her, Patrick. And I understand now. No matter how much she changes, I'll never be the daughter she wanted. She always loved Elizabeth more. She always thought I wasn't strong enough to live my own life. But I can't change her. I can only change myself. Patrick said nothing. He just held my hand tighter, as if trying to give me even more strength. I knew that no matter what happened, he would always be by my side. And that gave me peace. The next day I decided I wouldn't dwell on the past anymore. I didn't need to live in the shadow of that betrayal. My company had grown, and I was proud of everything I had achieved. But more importantly, I had found myself. I was no longer the weak girl my family once believed I would always be. A month later, when I had started to feel more settled in my new life, I received an unexpected call from my mother. I didn't know how to face her, but this time, I didn't feel scared or anxious like before. I had changed, and I knew I could face anything now. "Amelia, I know we haven't had a good relationship," she began, her voice slightly choked. "I want you to know I'm deeply sorry for hurting you. Can you forgive me?" I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. My mother had never apologized so sincerely before. But I didn't need her apology to feel like I'd won. I had already won. Over myself. "Mom, I forgave you a long time ago," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "But I can't go back to the past. I've chosen my own path, and I'm proud of it." She was silent for a moment, then said, "I understand, Amelia. I just want you to know I've always loved you. I never wanted to hurt you." I smiled softly, though my heart stirred a little. "I know, Mom. But I need to live my own life, not the one you planned for me." After that call, I felt more relieved than ever. Not because I received an apology, but because I no longer needed my mother's approval. I had done what they believed I couldn't. I had found freedom and happiness. And that was the most important thing. My life now is no longer about betrayal, no longer about pain. It's a life I'm proud of, a life I built from the very first steps, no matter how difficult they were. I'm not seeking revenge, nor do I need to prove anything to anyone. I just need to live true to myself, and that is the greatest reward I could ever receive. This feeling of happiness, peace, and freedom. I know I've earned it. My mother, Elizabeth, and Mark might feel confused or regretful, but I no longer let them control my life. Now, I'm the one who decides my future. And I will never go back. My life is now so far from what I once imagined. The painful days, the sleepless nights filled with worry, the family conflicts, they're now just scars from the past. Looking back, I realize it was those very wounds that helped shape the woman I am today. And instead of clinging to pain or seeking revenge, I chose liberation. I can't deny that I was once deeply hurt. My mother's words, Elizabeth's contemptuous looks, and Mark's betrayal, they all made me feel small, like someone who couldn't stand on her own. But step by step, I learned that I didn't have to live in their shadow. I didn't need to prove my worth through their validation. I stood up, rebuilt my life, and slowly found my freedom. Perhaps those past wounds taught me the most important thing: independence and confidence. I don't need to beg for forgiveness or even recognition from my mother, Elizabeth, or Mark. I'm not looking for revenge. I don't need to make them hurt like I once did. I just need to live as my true self. And now, I know I've achieved that. It's been a year since Patrick and I started our sustainable investment company. The business has grown tremendously, with a passionate team, and I can't help but feel proud of what we've accomplished. Every day at the company brings me joy. It's no longer stress or exhaustion like it used to be. Patrick is always by my side, sharing important decisions, challenges, and the small joys we create together. One morning as I sat at my desk, looking out the window at the warm sunlight pouring in, I felt a peace I had never known before. In the past I lived in constant anxiety, longing for love and acceptance from my family, but now, I had everything I needed: a successful company, a trustworthy life partner, and most importantly, I had myself. "How are you feeling, Amelia?" Patrick asked, breaking my thoughts as he walked into the room with a cup of coffee. "You know," I said, smiling as I took the cup from him, "I've never felt this free and at peace before." Patrick sat beside me, his eyes warm and full of understanding. "You've come a long way. I'm really proud of you." I looked at him, and suddenly my heart filled with emotion. "Thank you, Patrick. You're the one who helped me see myself, not just in work but in life. I don't know where I'd be without you." He smiled gently and ran his hand through my hair with affection. "You're stronger than anyone I know, and I'm so glad to be part of your life." His words made me feel as if I had finally broken free from all the pain of the past. Step by step I had overcome everything. Not to get revenge, but to live true to myself. That is true freedom. The people who betrayed me, who hurt me, they no longer held any meaning. They couldn't hurt me anymore. And then I realized, what I truly needed wasn't their forgiveness. It was peace in my own heart. The years of stress and anxiety were behind me, and now I was left with trust in myself. I didn't need to live up to anyone's expectations. Didn't need to please anyone. I am Amelia, and I am proud of who I am. That weekend, when we attended a major business event, I looked around and realized just how far I had come. My company wasn't just financially successful, it was creating real value for the community. We helped small businesses grow sustainably, created job opportunities, and improved the environment. That sense of pride and happiness made me see that I was no longer the girl seeking acceptance from her family. I was the one in control of her own life. When we returned from the event, Patrick looked at me and said, "Do you see this, Amelia? Everything we've done. It all matters. I always believed you could create something amazing." I nodded, my heart full of gratitude. Yes, we did it. And I realize now that all I ever needed was to live true to myself. Not revenge, not proving anything, just being who I am. And that's enough. Patrick held my hand, his eyes filled with love. "And I'll always be by your side, no matter what." The peace I felt in that moment was all I ever needed. My mother, Elizabeth Mark. They may not understand, they may feel confused, but I no longer needed their approval. They are the past. And I am the present and the future of my own life. And I don't need to change to please anyone. I'm no longer looking for revenge. I don't need to make them regret anything. I just need to live true to who I am. From now on, my life will always be my own to decide, and I won't let anyone hold me back again. The freedom, the gratitude for all the pain I've endured, those are what I've found. And in the end, I know I already have everything I need. Amelia's story is a testament to the power of perseverance, self-worth, and the determination to rise above adversity. The wounds of the past were not a burden, but valuable lessons that helped her grow. Instead of seeking revenge, Amelia chose to live authentically, assert her worth, and build a fulfilling life through wise decisions. Her journey reminds us that when we learn to love and trust ourselves, we find true freedom and peace. Amelia's story surely stirred deep emotions and thoughts. How do you feel about her journey? Share your thoughts below this video, and don't forget to follow the channel, so you won't miss more touching and meaningful stories about family life.
I'm Savannah. I grew up in a beige two-storm house in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, where everything always revolved around my sister Natalie. Natalie could sing, dance, had golden hair like a shampoo commercial, and always knew how to catch the grown-ups' attention. Every time our relatives came over, my mom would push her to the center of the living room like a prized decoration. "Natalie, sing The Climb for everyone," she'd chirp, eyes lighting up as if Miley Cyrus herself had walked into the room. Natalie would pretend to hesitate for a second before standing tall, flashing her charming smile and launching into song. Everyone would swoon like they were watching American Idol. Meanwhile, ZZ, frizzy brown hair and oversized glasses, would sit tucked beside the old upright piano, pretending to be absorbed in coloring so no one would ask me anything. No one asked me to stand up, no one wondered what I liked. At most, I'd get a passing comment. "Who's that girl again?" "Oh, right, the second daughter of the Masons." Every time I heard that, I wanted to disappear into the wall. I didn't hate Natalie. I hated the way people made me feel like an extra part no one asked for. While Natalie was shuttled off to ballet, art classes, and music lessons, I stayed home, walking the neighbor's dog or dusting my mom's ceramic collection. I once overheard my dad tell Uncle Eddie at a party, "Savannah's different. She's into those weird books, not very social." Uncle Eddie laughed. "Well, having one daughter like Natalie's enough to be thankful for. Savannah, at least she's obedient." I stood behind the kitchen door and heard it all. I didn't cry, I just bit my lip until it bled. The only person who didn't see through me like I was invisible was Aunt Evelyn, my grandmother's older sister. She lived alone in a little house at the end of the street, always filled with the smell of apple pie and old jazz records. She'd invite me over on weekends, we'd read in the garden, or arrange wildflowers she called free therapy. "You know, Savannah," she once said after I told her about school, "some people aren't meant to shine the way the crowd wants, but if you follow your own path, one day the world will have no choice but to look your way." I looked at her silver hair, deeply lined face, and those eyes that seemed to see straight through me. "The problem is," I mumbled, "no one wants to listen to me, Aunt Evelyn." "Then write for yourself first," she smiled, pouring more tea. "One day someone else will have to read." She didn't praise me for being pretty. She didn't ask why I wasn't outgoing like Natalie. She never said, "Sing a little something for the group." She just let me be. Truly be. There were times I wished Aunt Evelyn had been my mom. The wishes were just that, wishes. Because at home, nothing changed. Natalie stayed at the center and I stayed on the edge, like a shadow. And as I grew older, that shadow began to feel colder than I could pretend to ignore. In May, when I was 18, Eastbrook High held its year-end academic awards ceremony. I walked up to the stage and received my certificate, my name, Savannah Mason, printed clearly. Valedictorian, 4 GPA, and honors scholarships from 3 universities. Applause thundered like a downpour, but all I saw were 3 empty seats in the parents section. Mom didn't come. Dad didn't either. Natalie was off doing a lookbook shoot in New York. That evening, I brought the certificate home and gently placed it on the dinner table, right next to Mom's cold pasta dish. She glanced over, didn't even lift her head. What's that? An honors certificate. I'm the top student this year. Mm-hmm. So what are you planning after graduation? I got 3 scholarships. I want to major in business management. Dad sat across from me, setting down his beer with a smirk. Management. Natalie's the type for that field. You should look into something more realistic. Maybe accounting, secretary work. I swallowed hard. I've already applied. The University of Michigan accepted me. They even offered on-campus housing for the first year. Who's paying for transportation? Mom cut in, eyes still on her phone. Just so you know, there's no more college fund. We already spent over $60,000 on Natalie. She needs a new car for her internship, too. I looked over at the fridge. There was a picture of Natalie holding flowers next to her shiny new Mini Coupe. But I got a scholarship. Scholarships don't cover books, meals, insurance, Dad interrupted, and we don't have a dime left. I exhaled, shaky. I can work part-time. I could apply for a loan. You think we'll let you rack up student debt just to drop out halfway? Mom laughed without a hint of kindness. You're only good at textbook stuff. The real world's different. I stood, gripping the edge of the chair. I'm not Natalie, but I've worked 5 times harder for this. Exactly. You're not Natalie, Mom said coldly, which is why you need to be realistic. Uncle Rob's got a job at the furniture store. Not bad for someone fresh out of high school. I let out a bitter laugh, stomach turning. Lifting couches, right? Watch your mouth, Dad snapped. I didn't argue. I just turned, went upstairs, and locked my door. That night, I opened my laptop, signed out of my school account, and logged into my college admissions portal. My hand trembled as I hovered over the Decline Admissions button. And clicked. I almost clicked. But then a message popped up in the corner of my screen. My dear girl, it's Aunt Evelyn. Come visit this weekend. I have a surprise waiting. I broke down. A few days later, I rode my bike to Aunt Evelyn's red brick house, a charming ivy-covered home nestled between rows of tall lavender and crepe myrtle trees. She greeted me with a tight hug, like she somehow knew exactly how broken I'd been that week. We sat on her porch, she poured peach tea, and I stayed quiet. Savannah, she began, I know you'd never ask, so I'll say it first. They don't deserve you. I didn't answer. But I have something for you. She pulled out a cream-colored envelope and placed it on my lap. I opened it. Inside was a check, $25,000. I stammered, Auntie, this. I saved this from my teaching days. It's not much, but enough to give you a start. I burst into tears. I can't take this. You have to, she said, gripping my hand, because I've seen the fire in you since you were 10 years old, and no one gets to extinguish that. That night, I didn't go home. I sat on her porch well past midnight, listening to the crickets, and for the first time in weeks, I felt peace settle over me. 1 week later, I moved in with Aunt Evelyn. No one from home tried to stop me. No one even said goodbye. Mom just tossed out one last line as I loaded my suitcase into the car. Go, but don't come crawling back. I didn't answer. Aunt Evelyn's house sat at the end of Bellevue Street, a quiet road shaded by oak trees, far removed from the suffocating space I used to call home. Here, every morning felt like a new beginning. The smell of coffee wafting from her vintage kitchen, soft jazz humming from the record player, and sunlight painting everything through the old window panes like a living canvas. Aunt Evelyn never pried, never forced me to talk about what had happened. Instead, she began each day with one simple question. What do you want to do today for your future? I started resubmitting my college applications, this time with a personal hardship statement. On her advice. Aunt Evelyn wasn't just family. She had once been a professor of public administration at a community college. Helping me wasn't just a favor. It was a calling. 3 weeks later, I received an email from the Central Carolina University School of Business. They accepted me into their business management program along with additional financial support due to my circumstances. I didn't say a word. I just handed my phone to Aunt Evelyn. She gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze. Well then, it begins, Savannah. From now on, you're the one steering this life. I cried, not because I was emotional, but because, for the first time in my life, someone truly believed I could succeed. She drove me to orientation in her old olive green Buick, the leather seats worn but clean, scented faintly of lavender. During the ride, she handed me another envelope. This time it held a bank card with my name on it, linked to the tuition account she had set up. Use this for the right reasons, not to spend, but to prove you don't need them. I nodded, hands trembling as I took it. On my first day, I wore the crisp white blouse Aunt Evelyn had pressed, tied my hair back neatly, and walked into the campus, heart pounding like a drumline. The classrooms were wide and full of light, students from all over the state, and no one knew who I was. For the first time, I felt free. Free to start without being Natalie's little sister. I wasn't outgoing right away, but I listened intently, took detailed notes, and always turned in my work on time. By the third session, Professor Monroe, who taught strategic management, called me up after class. "Where are you from, Savannah?" "I used to attend Eastbrook High. I just moved from the west side of Raleigh. I can tell you see things differently. That's rare. Don't lose it." His words planted a seed in me, and it began to grow. Soon after, I signed up as a student assistant in the campus support office. 3 times a week, I sat at the information desk, helping students fill out scholarship forms, navigate buildings, or find the library. The pay wasn't much, but it helped cover food and used books. I studied late, read ahead on weekends, and every night I called Aunt Evelyn to tell her what I'd learned. She always asked the same thing. "What's one thing you're proud of today?" I'd answer with little things, solving a tough problem, talking to a classmate, or just not shaking during a presentation. She'd nod each time, as if every small win was living proof of what she'd believed from the beginning, that I mattered. One October afternoon, while scrubbing the dorm bathrooms during a custodial shift, I got the email. I'd been chosen for the Student Leadership Fellowship, one of only 10 freshmen in the entire school. I broke down crying in the hallway, not for the scholarship, but because I was no longer that kid who should have gone to trade school in my parents' eyes. That night, I printed the email, slid it into a portfolio binder, and placed it on Aunt Evelyn's bookshelf, right between The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Lean In. She said nothing, just pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You're on your way now, Savannah, and you've never made me anything but proud." I gripped her hand tightly. I graduated from Central Carolina University at the age of 22, with highest honors, a spotless transcript, and a thesis that was named Best in Class by the faculty board. The ceremony was held in a grand oak-paneled auditorium where applause echoed nonstop. I wore a deep navy gown gripping the diploma with my name on it. In the 4th row, Aunt Evelyn sat upright, eyes shimmering. She was the only one I invited. No mom, no dad. Natalie was probably flying to Miami or busy with a photo shoot. But I didn't feel empty. I felt whole. 1 week later, I was hired as an assistant manager at Veridian, a high-end restaurant chain expanding throughout the Charlotte area. Each location ranked among the top on the local Michelin watch list. Elegant without being showy, refined but still warm. I started with the basics: scheduling shifts, managing inventory, resolving customer complaints. I learned how to lead a team of nearly 30 without making anyone feel commanded. The skills I had once scribbled furiously in class became instinct: crisis, analyze, respond, adjust. Within 12 months, I was promoted to manager of Veridian's 5th branch, right in the heart of uptown Charlotte. I had just turned 23. That was also the first time Mom called me in 3 years. "Davienne, we heard you're a manager now at some famous restaurant?" I held the phone with one hand while signing off inventory with the other. "Veridian. I run the main location." "Ooh, That's impressive. Your dad and we're happy for you. I said nothing. Something inside me had long since hardened, like fresh skin that had learned not to tear again. A few weeks later, Natalie unexpectedly texted. She sent a photo of her baby girl, Ruby, 3 months old, along with a single line. I need to talk. Can I call you? I don't know what made me agree, but that evening I picked up. What came out was a flood. Natalie had dropped out in her final year at Parsons after getting pregnant by a cinematographer more than 10 years her senior. He had promised everything, but when she refused to terminate the pregnancy, he vanished. Our parents offered no support, especially Mom. Mom said I ruined my future, Natalie choked. Now I'm living in Grandma's basement. I stayed quiet. Savannah, I know I hurt you a lot, but I really want to start over. For the first time, Natalie wasn't arrogant or fake. She was just honest. I didn't say I forgave her. I simply asked, do you have a job? Trying to get one at a cafe nearby, but diapers, doctor bills. I looked around my office, managing schedules for nearly 50 staff. An idea sparked. Viridian needs an administrative assistant. If you can come to Charlotte, I'll talk to senior management. No promises, but I'll try. Natalie was silent for a long moment, then she broke down, crying. The next week, she showed up at my office, nothing like the Instagram model she used to be. Dark circles, exhausted posture, but honest eyes. After the interview, HR gave a cautious thumbs up. Natalie was hired on a 3-month trial. At first, I stayed guarded, but she was efficient, organized, always on time, no no-shows. Eventually, the team warmed up to her, not for her past, but because of her effort now. One afternoon, I caught sight of her gently rocking Ruby to sleep in the office break room, singing quietly. I stood in the hallway, watching. I didn't know if Natalie had truly changed. When Natalie was officially signed on full-time at Viridian, I thought things would settle, but I underestimated my parents' uncanny ability to sniff out success like bloodhounds. About 2 months later, right after Natalie received a nomination to become regional admin lead, I got a FaceTime call from my mother. I hesitated for over a minute before answering. Her familiar face appeared on screen, perfectly curled blonde hair, blush a bit heavy, and a smile far too sweet to be real. 7A. I said nothing, waiting to see how long it would take for her to get to the point. Your dad and I have been keeping up with your progress. Heard you're opening a new branch. So exciting. I gave a faint smile. Is that so? Funny, I don't remember anyone cheering when I got a full scholarship. She paused, then forced a chuckle. That's in the past, honey. Everyone makes mistakes. Actually, I called to ask you about something. I crossed my arms. My heart was ice. Let's skip to the point. What do you want? It's your father. His health's been poor lately. He had to leave work, and they cut my hours at the salon. I wasn't surprised. They were both in their mid-50s, never saved a dime, and had lived off Natalie's golden child image for years. When she crashed, they had no cushion, no plan, no backup. And she pressed her lips together. Everyone in the family says you're doing well, really well. Maybe you could help out a bit, just for a few months? Turned to the window. Outside, my staff moved briskly through prep for a quality inspection I'd designed from scratch. Every success I'd built had been earned, alone, brick by brick. I looked back at the screen. You know Natalie works here now, right? Yes, she told me. She's really changed, thanks to you giving her a chance. I nodded. I'll help, but not with money. She frowned. What do you mean? If you and Dad really need work, I'll speak with HR at the Raleigh branch. They've got openings in cold storage, delivery, and late shift sanitation. Living wage, full benefits. Silence. Long enough that I thought she had hung up. Then her voice snapped back, sharper than I expected. You want your parents doing manual labor after all we've done for you? I stared straight at her. Exactly. Or you can figure it out yourselves. I'm done paying the debt of 18 years of favoritism. She opened her mouth to reply, but I ended the call. That night, I told Natalie as we were organizing backstock in the supply room. She didn't seem surprised. You're softer than I'd be. I'd have blocked them already. I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for me, so I don't carry the guilt anymore. 3 weeks later, my father showed up to the Raleigh branch. Wrinkled dress shirt, dark circles under his eyes, but he clocked in on time, worked every shift. Mom never came. Word was she'd started helping a friend run an online resale business from home. I didn't ask. That spring, Natalie was promoted to regional admin director. She stood beside me during Viridian's internal conference, her eyes shining as the CEO called us the Mason sisters, Viridian's rising stars. After the event, Natalie pulled a card from her purse. "And you come by on Saturday. Ruby wants you to blow out her birthday candles." My throat tightened. "I'll be there, but you better get a sugar-free cake." She laughed and pulled me into a hug. I'd never imagined I'd laugh with my sister like that, or see my father wiping sweat from his forehead in a warehouse uniform and not feel bitterness. But it turns out justice doesn't always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it comes from choosing the right thing over and over, until the world has no choice but to change with you. That Sunday afternoon, I was sitting alone in my office, sketching out a new staff training module for our upcoming location, when my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Notifications poured in. Texts from Natalie, our HR manager, even a few people I hadn't heard from since high school. All of them sent the same Facebook link, posted by an account named Evelyn G. Parker. I frowned. Aunt Evelyn hardly ever used social media. Curious, I tapped the video. The first image that appeared was the familiar kitchen of my parents' house. Pale blue walls, white plaid curtains. Then came my mother's voice, loud and unfiltered even though laughter distorted the audio slightly. "That girl, Savannah, she looks successful, sure, but she only got where she is because of other people. She can't do anything on her own." I froze. My father sat across from her, holding a beer, and let out a hearty laugh. "People think she's some hotshot manager, but it's all Natalie behind the scenes. She's the real brain." Then a woman off-screen, probably my aunt, chimed in. "So, who paid for their fancy new house?" My mother shrugged. "Mostly from the allowance she sends every month, but we always have to remind her. Always trying to play the part." My chest tightened. I stood up, clutching my phone like it might shatter. Aunt Evelyn, somehow unintentionally, had recorded the entire family gathering from the night before. She probably thought she was capturing a cozy dinner prep scene, but her phone had caught everything they said when they thought no one was listening. I scrolled down to the comments. Somehow it got worse. "Natalie Mason, I don't agree with anything said in this video." "Evelyn G. Parker, I don't know how to delete it, and I don't plan to. If people can talk like that behind Savannah's back, they should be brave enough to face it in daylight." Natalie texted me immediately afterward. "Savannah, are you okay? Have you seen the video?" I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop, turned on the webcam, and stared directly into the lens. My eyes were puffy, but my voice came out calm, almost too calm. If anyone's ever asked why I didn't invite my family to graduation, why I don't share my milestones or come home for the holidays, this is why. You can work your whole life to be seen, and when you finally make it, they'll still laugh behind your back, still say you didn't do it on your own. The truth isn't what they say to your face. It's what they're willing to say when they think you're not listening. I ended the video with one sentence. I forgave them once, but this time, I'm just letting go. I didn't post it publicly. I sent it only to Natalie. An hour later, she called. "You didn't deserve to hear any of that, and I should have said something. I should have spoken up." I cut in gently. "But you didn't." "I know," she whispered. "And I'm going to make it right." The next day, Natalie organized a small family gathering at our grandmother's house. I didn't go, but I heard what happened. She played the video in front of everyone. Then she stood up, steady and clear, and said, "From now on, anyone who insults Savannah or belittles what she's achieved will no longer be part of my life, or my daughter's." Later that night, she sent me a voice memo of what she had said. I played it at 3 in the morning, alone in my apartment. And I cried, not because I was betrayed, but because finally, after all these years, someone in the family had stood up for me, not for favors, not for money, but because it was the right thing to do. And I didn't text Natalie back that night, but inside me, something shifted. A door I thought was permanently shut creaked open, just slightly, just enough for the light to find its way in. That Tuesday morning at 6:45, I cut the cord, officially. The final message I ever sent to my parents contained just one line. I saw the video. From now on, don't call, don't text, don't ask for anything. This relationship is paid in full. No apologies, no explanations, just an ending, clean and sharp like a blade through an already frayed rope. 3 days later, Mom sent a 4-minute voice message. I didn't listen. Dad emailed me with the subject line, "You can't do this to your family." I deleted it unopened. I canceled all monthly transfers, called my lawyer to terminate the informal home renovation loan. Every quiet thing I had done for them, paying off Dad's medical bills, helping Natalie afford extra tutoring years ago, stopped. I wasn't angry. What I felt was something rarer, peace, quiet, liberating peace. 2 weeks later, Mr. Markson, the founder of Viridian, asked to see me at our Atlanta headquarters. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, still carrying the edge of a master strategist. "Savannah," he said, "I'm retiring, and I won't hand this ship to anyone who doesn't have the guts to steer it through storms." I stayed silent, waiting. In 15 years, I've never seen someone take a mid-level branch into the regional top 3 in under 6 months. And I've never seen someone turn an almost burned-out employee, like Natalie, into a regional manager. I nodded slightly, my hands resting on my knees. He looked at me, voice dropping a tone deeper. "You don't just manage. You lead with resolve. I want you to be the next CEO of Viridian." I froze. "Sir, I'm only 26. I founded this company at 25. Age proves nothing, Savannah. Results do." My voice shook as I spoke. "I'll need a week to think it over." He chuckled. "No, you have 3 days. I'll be announcing it at the upcoming board meeting." That night, I called the one person I trusted without conditions, Aunt Evelyn. I told her everything. She listened, then said the one sentence that stopped me cold. "If you don't take this position, Savannah, no one deserves it more. What if I fail? Then you'll fail as someone brave enough to step up, not someone who watched opportunity pass by." I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, "Then I guess I'll step up." 3 days later, in the 18th floor boardroom, Mr. Markson placed a hand on my shoulder and announced to the entire leadership team, "Starting today, the new CEO of Viridian is Savannah Mason." The room erupted in applause. I stood there stunned. I could barely believe the name he'd just said was mine. News of my appointment spread like wildfire through the Viridian branches. The culinary world started buzzing. Magazines called me the youngest executive leader in fine dining across the southeastern United States. Reporters reached out, my LinkedIn blew up, my inbox overflowed with interview requests. And then, one quiet Saturday afternoon, I received a handwritten letter from someone I never expected. "Natalie, you've proven everything, and I'm proud of you, not because you pulled me out of the dark, but because you stood up when no one else did. Whether or not we're still on the same road, I need you to know this. I love you, not because you're successful, but because you've always been the bravest one in this family." I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer next to an old photo. Me, sitting in Aunt Evelyn's kitchen, holding a book, smiling softly. That photo was taken the first summer I moved in with her, the summer I started rebuilding myself. Today, as I stepped out of Viridian's brand new Chicago headquarters, our 50th location, I saw the evening sun glint off the glass doors etched with my name. Viridian Group, Savannah Mason, Chief Executive Officer. I was no longer the shadow behind Natalie. I was no longer the daughter who should have gone to trade school. I was the author of my own story. And this time, I'm writing all the way to the final page. Savannah's story is a powerful reminder that no one, not even the people who raised you, has the right to define your worth. Even when dismissed or overlooked, you can rise through resilience and conviction. True success doesn't come from others' validation. It's born from claiming your identity and living your truth. In real life, many are hurt by family, but everyone deserves the chance to rewrite their story on their own terms. What do you think about Savannah's choices and everything she went through? What would you do in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories like this one.
I'm Ivy Reynolds, 36 years old, working in corporate auditing in Denver, Colorado. That evening, I drove back to my parents' house after being invited for an important family discussion. Despite a lingering unease, I returned to the quiet suburb where I grew up. A street lined with amber maples in early fall, where my family's gray-blue wooden house stood still, untouched by time for the past 2 decades. In the kitchen, the bright ceiling light reflected off the worn oak dining table, where my parents, Walter and Caroline, sat across from each other. Next to them were my 2 younger brothers, Mason and Dylan. The 31-year-old twins were unemployed, still living at home, constantly defended by my mother with her go-to phrase, "They're just finding their path, honey." The smell of pot roast and garlic bread drifted from the oven, stirring memories of childhood dinners, back when I thought this house meant belonging. But something in the air tonight felt as heavy as stone pressing on my chest. Asian. I had barely pulled out my chair when my mother spoke, her fingers gripping her napkin like a lifeline. "You came at the right time, Ivy. We need to talk about a family decision." My father, the stern man who once taught high school math, now retired, continued with a flat tone, like reading out test scores. "We finalized our will, and we want you to hear it directly from us, so there's no confusion later." Mason leaned back, arms crossed, wearing a smug half-smile. Dylan shrugged, his face neutral, like he already knew what was coming. I hadn't said a word when my mother delivered the next line, like a bullet to the chest. "All the assets will go to Mason and Dylan. The house, the cabin in Estes Park, and the retirement accounts. You won't receive anything." For a moment, I thought I misheard. The room fell silent, suffocating. I looked at my mother, hoping she'd laugh it off. "Just kidding." But instead, she gave a firm nod. "Because you have a stable job and solid income, and the boys, they're still struggling. We think it's the fairest decision." I turned to my father, hoping for eye contact, even a flicker of discomfort, but he stared into his glass of water, never once lifting his gaze. It hit like a reopened wound, sharp and raw. "I've paid your mortgage for 5 years, I said, my voice trembling from hurt, not anger. "I covered over $18,000 in medical bills last year for Dad. And more than $25,000 for Mason every time he changed careers." My mother set her glass down slowly, her eyes cold. "And see, Ivy, you always make everything about money. You don't understand that family love can't be measured in receipts." "It's not about money," I replied, my hands clenched under the table. "It's about fairness, about showing up every time you needed me, only to be treated now like I don't exist." Mason laughed, the kind of laugh that belongs to people who've never had to carry anyone but themselves. "You just liked playing the martyr, and now you're upset no one's giving you a medal?" Dylan chimed in, grinning. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough cash around, they'd love you like some sitcom ending." Dream on. I turned back to my parents, waiting for them to intervene, to scold them. But silence. And in that silence I understood. I had no place in this family. Not if I wasn't paying for it. I took a deep breath, my chest tight. "If that's your choice," I said, unnervingly calm, "then I have one too." Mason raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Whether you gonna sue us?" I stood, sliding my chair back to the table. "From now on, don't expect a thing from me, not a cent, not a call, Not a second chance. Then, I walked out of that kitchen, past the simmering pot roast, the blinding overhead light, and 4 stunned faces too frozen to respond. No one stopped me. No one called my name. Only the sound of the door clicking shut. Final, deliberate, and without regret. I got back to my downtown Denver apartment just after 8 p.m., my heels tapping sharply against the hardwood floor in the silence. Without even taking off my coat, I headed straight to the dining table and opened my laptop. The bank dashboard lit up under the soft amber light. I stared at the list of active recurring payments. Each line cold and mechanical, like the heartbeat of a stranger. $1,850 per month for my parents. The remaining mortgage on the house in Boulder. $1,200 split between Mason and Dylan, a temporary living expense that became a permanent allowance. $275 for my father's health insurance. $190 for an internet service I never used but was in my name. I sat still, my hands trembling. Not from fear, but from fury at myself. Fury for letting it go on this long. It took less than 15 minutes to cancel them all. Each click felt like a clean, surgical cut. Recurring payment successfully canceled. 4 times in a row. I stared at the final confirmation as if it were a court sentence. Not for them, but for me. Not even 10 minutes later my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Mom. I wasn't surprised. I didn't answer. She called again. Once. Twice. On the 4th call, I picked up. Ivy? Her voice was sharp, breathless. What the hell did you just do? Your father said the account didn't receive the payment this week, and the internet is down. I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm. I just stopped doing what I should have stopped a long time ago. Do you realize how this affects us? She snapped, voice shaking. This household depends on your support. We're family, Ivy. Families help each other. I squinted out the window at Denver's city lights fading behind the evening fog. Family, I said. You talk like I've never done anything for this family. Like I haven't paid the mortgage, medical bills, utilities for 7 years. And now, just because I've done better than Mason and Dylan, I get erased from the will. You're making this more complicated than it is, she barked. The inheritance was a hard decision. But you're not in need. Your brothers are struggling. They need a foundation. I let out a dry laugh. There was nothing funny about it. If I'm not in need, why does the entire house rely on my money to stay afloat? If money doesn't matter, then let Mason and Dylan pay the bills. The other end went silent. I knew that silence, not guilt, but being cornered with no response. Ivy, you've become cold. This isn't the daughter I raised. You never really saw me, Mom. Just the credit card with my name on it. I ended the call, no waiting for her reply, no hesitation. 30 minutes later, Dylan texted. Cut the internet? You trying to get us kicked out? 1 minute after that, Mason messaged. What game are you playing? This isn't funny. I didn't reply. I deleted both texts. Then the screen lit up again, with a bank notification. My mom had tried to withdraw from the joint account I set up years ago to cover Dad's medical bills. An account I had just emptied and permanently closed. I had finally done what I never dared, closed every access point. I stepped onto the balcony, looking down at the stream of cars below. Denver buzzed and glowed as always. But inside me, for the first time, was silence. Not the kind that isolates, but the kind that frees. Another message chimed. I didn't check it. I closed my eyes and let the October wind push through my hair, stripping away years of burden. I was no longer the reliable daughter. The one who always did the right thing and paid the price for everyone. I was no longer the pillar propping up a so-called family duty, when what they really needed wasn't me, but my wallet. That night, I slept deeper than I had in years. No nightmares. No waking at midnight. No weight on my chest. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I turned off the ringer and moved every family contact into a folder labeled permanent silence. Tuesday afternoon, I had just left a meeting with the senior audit board when my phone started buzzing non-stop inside my handbag. 7 missed calls from Dad, 5 texts from Mom, 3 from Dylan, and a 58-second voice message from Mason. I hadn't even reached my apartment when the family group chat on Facebook, usually just a space to ping me for my bank info, suddenly came alive in a way it hadn't in years. Mason, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom and Dad are drowning in debt. Dylan, you're a traitor. You live comfortably while we're barely surviving. Is that what you wanted? Mason, you're not part of this family anymore. Don't expect your name mentioned when we bury our parents. I leaned my head against the elevator wall, closing my eyes for a few seconds to contain the rage bubbling to my throat. It wasn't what they said that burned. It was knowing I'd already seen it coming. The next day, my mom emailed me. Ivy, the family is meeting this Saturday at 6 p.m. You have to be there. No explanation, no invitation, just a command. I almost didn't go. But then I thought, maybe they're remorseful. Maybe this isn't just another guilt trip. Maybe. I was wrong. So I went. When I walked into the living room, they were all already there. My father stood by the fireplace, hands in his pockets, his face carved from stone. My mother sat on the sofa, eyes swollen, gripping a tissue. Mason and Dylan stood with arms crossed, contempt in their eyes unfiltered. "You're here." "Sit down," my mother said hoarsely. "I can't take this anymore." I stayed on my feet. My father spoke, each word heavy as granite on tile. "You have no idea what you've done to your mother. Her stress is through the roof. Her blood pressure is high. She hasn't slept since you stopped helping us." I stared directly into his eyes. "Oh? Did she sleep just fine when I was working double shifts to pay off your medical debts?" "Ivy," my mom cried out. "How can you say that? I'm your mother. Don't I deserve your help?" I gave a soft, bitter laugh. "You call draining my finances for 10 straight years helping?" Mason jumped in, voice laced with venom. "You've got no heart. You made some money and now you think we're trash." Dylan sneered beside him. "Or do you think being an auditor makes you better than us?" I didn't flinch. "It's not what I do, it's what I won't do anymore. If this family only sees me as an ATM, then I don't want the label family at all." My mother burst into tears. "You're tearing this family apart over money." I tightened my grip on my bag strap. "No, Mom. The years of your silence tore it apart. Long before I did anything." No one said another word. The room fell into a suffocating hush. I turned and walked out, each step on the wood floor drawing a line I would never cross again. I left with a truth they were too afraid to say out loud. They never loved me for who I was. Only for what I could provide. And that night, for the first time in years, I blocked every family contact from my phone. Calls, texts, social media, everything. They can say whatever they want, call me a traitor, but I know this. Betrayal didn't come from me. It came from them. The moment they decided I was a wallet before I was a daughter. 3 days after the family meeting, I got home late from a presentation to the investment board. Light rain was falling, the air damp and cold. Perfect weather to shower and collapse into bed. But when I reached the door of my 9th floor apartment, I stopped dead. The entire electronic lock and door handle had been sealed shut with thick gray industrial adhesive. A smooth, even layer. Still not fully dried. The chemical smell was fresh and overwhelming. I stood there, heart pounding. But my mind sharp. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. I pulled out my phone and opened the hallway camera app I had installed last year after a break-in in the building. Rewinding footage from earlier that day, I paused at 3:47 p.m. A man appeared. Baseball cap, surgical mask, red spray can in hand. When he bent down to check the door frame, the angle revealed enough. The sleeve of a gray hoodie I recognized instantly. Dylan wore it all last winter. But what sealed it was his left wrist. A small arrow tattoo just below the bone. That tattoo belonged to Mason. I narrowed my eyes, rewound again, and watched him press his fingers along the door's edge to inspect his handiwork. Then he walked away, unaware he had just been caught. I called building security and immediately reported it to the local police. Within 45 minutes, 2 officers arrived along with maintenance staff. They removed the adhesive with industrial tools. I handed over the video footage without hesitation. Officer Ray, a stern, composed man in his 50s, watched the clip, then turned to me. "Do you want to press charges for property vandalism?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes. I want Mason Reynolds to be held fully accountable. Without consequences, this won't stop." That evening, I received 3 missed calls from Dad. 1 text from Mom. "How could you call the police on your own brother? You're turning this family into enemies." No apologies, no one asked if I was safe, just blame, as always. I didn't respond. The next day, Mason called. I answered. He was already shouting. "You've completely lost it. You blew this out of proportion over a prank? You want to send me to jail?" I answered coldly. "If your prank left me locked out of my home, requiring police and a locksmith, then it's no prank. It's criminal." Mason scoffed. "How much? Just tell me, so I never have to see your face again." I glanced at the invoice from building management. $3,000. "You have 24 hours or I file a civil suit." That afternoon I received a bank notification. A deposit of $3,000 from MR Holdings. The transfer note read just 4 words. "Don't ever contact me." I set my phone down. No reply. There was nothing left to say. As dusk settled, I made a cup of ginger tea and sat alone by the window. Below, rows of golden streetlights stretched like rivers into the dark. I exhaled slowly. My family had taken another step, this time beyond conflict and into sabotage. I used to think that if I stepped away, they would fade out quietly. But no. They escalated. They turned the loss of their financial access into justification for personal destruction. And I understood something terrifying. This was never about love. It was about control. About ownership. And the moment I took that away, they saw me not as a daughter, but as a threat. I was checking work emails on Monday morning when a Facebook notification popped up on my phone screen. Caroline Reynolds just posted in the group, "Reynolds, Family and Friends." I'd never cared about that group, a place where distant relatives posted barbecue photos, wedding announcements, and shallow "family is everything" quotes. But the title of the post made me freeze. "When a daughter abandons her family for money." I tapped in. Of course it was my mother. A long, emotionally worded post. Careful not to mention my name. But everyone would know exactly who she meant. It breaks our hearts when the child we raised turns her back on us during hard times. We never asked for much. Just a little help to keep the house, to afford my husband's medication. But she has a career, money, and a frozen heart. Below were dozens of comments from relatives, neighbors, and Mom's old high school friends. "Kids today are so ungrateful. I've known Ivy since she was a baby. Can't believe she turned out so cruel. What's the point of success if you've lost your morals?" Then came a message from Aunt Sarah, Mom's cousin. "Ivy, is this true? How could you leave your parents like this?" A former high school classmate I hadn't spoken to in 15 years messaged me. "Not trying to judge, but if what's going around about your family is true, I'm really disappointed." I went stiff. They didn't know I'd been paying the mortgage for 5 years. No one mentioned that I'd spent over $60,000 in the last decade covering bills, medication, tuition, and credit card debt for both Mason and Dylan. No one brought up how Mason vandalized my door, and was forced to pay $3,000 under police orders. I opened my laptop. I had no reason to stay silent anymore. I went to my profile and hit create post. If my mother wants to tell a story, then here's mine. Over the past 10 years, I paid $1,850 per month toward the majority of my parents' mortgage. $1,200 per month for Mason and Dylan for emergency help, a stretch that lasted 6 uninterrupted years. $17,300 for my father's hospital bills. $4,200 in tuition for Dylan, who dropped out of college 3 times. $8,000 for Mason to buy a car, to find work which he used instead for vacation trips with his girlfriend. I also covered health insurance, electric bills, internet, and multiple home repairs, all in my name, never thanked. When I stopped providing financial support, I didn't get calls of concern or apology, just threats, insults, and more recently, vandalism by Mason that forced me to involve the police and demand a $3,000 settlement. I've never rejected love, but I refuse to be used. Family is not a place where one person is drained dry so others can live in comfort. If you call what I've done ungrateful, then ask yourself, who never once showed gratitude? I hit post. In less than 2 hours, the post had over 60 shares. Comments poured in. Some still sided with Mom and scolded me. But to my surprise, many previously silent relatives started asking questions. I didn't know Ivy contributed that much. If what Ivy said is true, this isn't as simple as Caroline made it sound. Then came a private message from Aunt Daisy, the one relative I always loved most. You don't owe anyone an apology. I've known for a long time, but I was too scared to speak up. You did the right thing. That night, Mom called. I answered calmly. Ivy, what did you just do? The whole family's in chaos. I told the truth, and if the truth embarrasses you, that's because you chose to shame me first. She paused, then her voice dropped cold. You're tearing this family apart. I smiled, not bitter, just tired. Mom, the family didn't fall apart because I spoke. It broke when you chose to bury the truth just to earn more pity. After that post, my phone went eerily silent. No more endless messages from my mother. No missed calls from my father. No sarcastic jabs from Mason and Dylan. The family group chat, once buzzing with daily notifications, now displayed a single gray line. Ivy Reynolds was removed from the group. I thought I'd feel empty. But I didn't. Not this time. Instead, I felt order. No more late-night calls asking, "Can you cover the electric bill this month?" No more weekend mornings starting with, "Mason's unemployed again." Or, "Dylan got dumped, he needs a few weeks to rest in Florida." The quiet in my apartment no longer felt like loneliness. It felt like freedom. I returned to work with a clarity I hadn't known in years. No more mental juggling between client audits and wondering whether my parents could afford their insurance premiums. Every thought now pointed in one direction. Me, and my path forward. 3 weeks later, during a mid-quarter review meeting, our executive director asked me to stay behind after everyone else had left. She closed her laptop, peering over the rim of her half-fame glasses. Ivy, I'll be blunt. You're the only person on the team who hasn't missed a single deadline in 3 straight quarters. I nodded quietly. And your handling of the Valora financial restructuring? They signed a 3-year retainer with us. That's never happened before. I still didn't say a word. I've never been the type to brag. Oh, starting next month, I want you as our new regional audit director for the Northwest. Your salary will be adjusted accordingly, but I'll need an answer within 48 hours. I stood, shook her hand. I won't need 48 hours, Ms. Collins, I accept. That evening, I opened a bottle of red wine, one I'd been saving for years, never quite feeling like I deserved to celebrate. I stood on my balcony as the first chill of autumn brushed my face. The Rockies loomed faintly in the distance. The city below still buzzed, but within me, peace. For the first time in years, I celebrated a win without hiding it, without bracing for the inevitable message from my mother. Congrats. But can you help Dylan with his car insurance? No more but. No more strings attached to every step forward. This success was mine, fully, unapologetically. I set down the glass and walked back inside, opening my personal email. There was a message from an unfamiliar address. An old college friend, now an advisor for a nonprofit. She wrote, "I read your post about your family. I never knew you'd been through so much, but the way you wrote, honest, grounded, never blaming, made me wonder. Would you be willing to share your story in a panel on women and family pressure in American culture?" I read the message twice. Part of me wanted to say no. After all, silence had been my safety for years. But I'm not there anymore. I typed 2 lines. I'd be honored to speak. I know I'm not the only one who's lived this. When I hit send, I didn't realize this would be the first time my story was truly heard, not as a tragedy, but as a declaration of the right to live for myself. I booked a ticket to Florence on a November morning, just as the cold had swept through Denver and the first snow still lingered on the rooftops. The flight lasted 10 hours, with a layover at JFK, then straight into Peretola Airport. I didn't tell anyone, didn't pack expectations. I only knew I needed to stand somewhere no one knew my name. The city revealed itself with blazing red roofs, cobbled streets, and church bells chiming like the soul's internal clock. I rented a small apartment near Piazza Santo Spirito, where the balcony faced a stretch of honey-colored domes glowing in the afternoon light. On my second evening in Florence, I sat in a quiet café called Café degli Artisti. It was a modest place, hushed, filled only with a dense scent of espresso and the sound of pages turning at the next table. I was scribbling a few lines into my notebook when a soft male voice came from across the table. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up. A man in his 40s, tall, with chestnut hair tinged with gray at the temples, wore a tweed coat and held a hardcover book. He smiled. "Go ahead," I nodded. He pulled out the chair, sat down and opened his book, but didn't read. After a moment, he said, "I'm guessing you're not Italian. But the way you watch things, it's like you've been here a while." I let out a soft laugh. Maybe I just noticed too much because I've never been allowed to slow down. He tilted his head, not judging, just listening. "I'm Julian, from Boston. I'm an interior architect, but lately I've been spending time wandering Europe to..." Pause. Life. I didn't ask why. He didn't ask what I did. We only talked about Florence. About rooftops that curve like waves. The sound of a violin from a second-floor window. The glow of amber light behind wrought iron frames. We saw each other again the next day, pure coincidence, at a second-hand bookstore by the Arno. Then again, at the flea market near San Lorenzo. By the third time, I offered, "If you don't mind, I know a place that makes the best walnut toast in Florence." He smiled. "I'll follow, you lead." That's how we began spending time together. No schedules, no expectations. Just warm coffee in the mornings by the window, late afternoon walks through golden alleys, and shared bottles of Chianti on an old rooftop terrace. Julia never asked about my family. He never pretended to understand or offered shallow advice. He just listened when I talked, and when I didn't, he stayed silent. The kind of gentle silence I'd never known before. One evening, as we sat on the steps of Santa Croce, I said without thinking, "I used to believe that if I gave enough, my family would finally see me. But in the end, they only saw what I brought, not who I was." Julien turned toward me, eyes softening. "Maybe it's because they only knew how to love what they needed. And you're learning how to love yourself without needing a reason." I looked up at the Florence night sky. Deep black, starless. But beneath it, the entire city shimmered, as if lit from within. I returned to Denver after 3 weeks in Florence, feeling as light as if I'd just shed an old skin that had clung to me for far too long. I restarted my work routine, but this time, not to prove anything to anyone. This time, I was investing in myself. I had quiet mornings, unhurried evening walks, and a reading list no longer interrupted by desperate text messages. One morning in late December, just as I was making coffee, my phone buzzed. A message from Lori, my distant cousin on my mother's side. It was a single line. Ivy, you should know. Your parents are working night shifts at the warehouse in South Aurora. I froze for a moment, coffee still tilting in my hand. I didn't respond right away. By noon, another message came in. This one from an old college friend of Dylan's. He's working part-time at a car wash. Got kicked out of his apartment for not paying rent. I wasn't surprised. And strangely, I didn't feel hurt. I knew why they ended up that way. They never learned to stand on their own feet. For years, I had unknowingly become their crutch, one they never wanted to let go of, until I pulled away and they fell. Not because I wished for it, but because I couldn't live forever under the weight of borrowed gratitude that was never returned. That evening, I pulled a red card from my drawer. This Christmas at Ivy's place, only for those who know what real love means. I sent it to a small group of friends, and one relative I still stayed in touch with, Aunt Beth. Aunt Beth, my mother's younger sister, was the only one who quietly reached out after my article went public. You didn't do anything wrong, I always saw how they used you. But I never had the courage to say it. On the afternoon of December 24th, she was the first to arrive. She brought a tin of ginger cookies, a bottle of warm apple cider, and a hand-knit wool bracelet. Did you know this is the first Christmas invite I've received since 2012? I smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we'll make this one count. My friends trickled in after that. Co-workers, neighbors, 2 college classmates. No one mentioned family. No one asked who I was angry with. They simply brought food, kind wishes, and the most precious thing of all, their presence, given freely. We had dinner around the long wooden table, candlelight casting shadows on the walls. There was laughter and moments of silence that didn't feel awkward. A little neighbor kid crawled into my lap and asked, "Miss Ivy, do you have any family?" I nodded, then pointed around the table. "This is my family." Later that night, when most had gone, Aunt Beth and I stood on the balcony, watching soft snow begin to fall. "Still no word from your mom?" she asked. I shook my head. "And I'm not hoping for any." She didn't lose touch. She chose silence. And I'm choosing not to open that door again. She didn't say anything more, just gently squeezed my hand. I stepped back inside, looking at the cleaned-up table, chairs neatly pushed in. No noise, no chaos. Yet my heart felt full. Every space in me, once reserved for waiting, had been filled by people who truly saw me. I don't know how my parents or my siblings will get through this winter. I don't know if they'll resent me forever. But I know one thing for certain. I don't owe them any salvation. Lived for them for far too long. Now, I choose to live for myself. And that was the first Christmas gift I ever gave myself. The gift of peace that needed no permission. January in Denver usually hits like a slap, sharp, cold and unforgiving. But this year, something about the air felt softer. Not because the weather was milder, but because my mind wasn't bracing itself for another guilt-laced call or a manipulative message wrapped in the word "fam." I woke up on a Sunday morning, with sunlight cutting through the curtains, casting a glow on the bookshelf where I kept the only childhood photo I still owned. Me at 8, sitting alone under the maple tree behind our house, clutching a frayed cloth doll. No one else in the frame. I hadn't noticed it then, but now it was painfully clear. I had always been there, alone, even in a house full of people. Everything changed the day they removed me from the will. At the time, it felt like the cruelest kind of rejection. But now, I see it for what it was. The first honest thing they had ever done for me, And strangely, it was a gift. A gift called freedom. Because only when I was no longer expected to be anything for them was I free to be everything for myself. I'm no longer the daughter who has to open her wallet to be heard. No longer the sister who absorbs everyone's failures. No longer the child who was never allowed to be fragile. I am Ivy Reynolds, 36, living alone on the 10th floor, with a job I love, a few good friends, and a peace I once believed only existed in movies. I spend my evenings with books, paintings, and pottery classes. I take weekend walks with Aunt Beth, and sometimes cook dinner for the elderly neighbor downstairs. I don't do it to be seen. I do it because it fills me up. One late afternoon, while finishing a project report, I received an email from Julian, the man I met in Florence. I'll be in Seattle soon for a design project. If you happen to be around, let me buy you a coffee. Just coffee, no expectations, just like Florence taught us to live. I stared at the words and smiled. I didn't know yet how I'd reply, but I did know this. I was no longer afraid of connection, because now I was strong enough to choose, and I would only keep what didn't demand sacrifice as proof of worth. Family, I've learned, isn't always tied by blood. It's made of people who make you feel lighter in their presence, who don't use love as leverage, who see you and stay. I used to think that if I tried a little harder, stayed a little quieter, gave a little more, they would accept me. But the truth is, love shouldn't cost you your sense of self. I'm no longer waiting for anyone's approval. I don't need thank yous. I don't need apologies, and I definitely don't need an invitation to return. I closed my notebook, stood up, and stepped onto the balcony. Below, snow had begun to drift softly onto bare tree limbs. Everything looked harsh, but beautiful, in its own way. Like me, still here after everything. Not broken, not shattered, just steadier, wiser, and freer than ever before. Ivy's story is a clear reminder that family ties should never be used to exploit some exploitation. In real life, some people show up only when your material value benefits them, and call it love. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal, it's the brave act of self-protection. Sometimes, the greatest gift isn't being accepted, it's being cut off, so you can finally live freely, true to your own worth, and no longer carry anyone else's weight. What do you think about Ivy's decision? Was she too harsh? Or just claiming what she truly deserved? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.